Hello guys, welcome to Fictional Vortex. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto was the reincarnation of the Soul King and ruled Hueco Mundo, Naruto x Yoruichi x Harribel, Bleach. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Awakening in Endless Night. Pain, darkness, then nothing. The void shattered as Naruto Uzumaki gasped awake, lungs burning as if he'd been drowning. White sand spilled between his fingers as he pushed himself upright. An impossible crescent moon hung suspended in an eternal night sky, casting silver light AC. Ross, an endless desert that stretched beyond comprehension. What the hell? His voice sounded wrong, deeper, layered with something that made the air vibrate. The last thing he remembered was Kagaya, the blinding light. His decision to absorb the 10 tails completely rather than let it destroy everything he loved. He should be dead. This wasn't death. At least not how he'd imagined it. Naruto examined his hands, finding them unmarked but somehow different. His skin held a subtle luminescence, and intricate patterns resembling seals pulsed beneath the surface when he channeled chakra. His tradit, ional orange and black uniform had been replaced by a white garment that resembled a mixture of his sage robes and something entirely unfamiliar, high-collared with black geometric patterns along its edges. The air felt wrong, heavy with a pressure that wasn't chakra but something adjacent, denser, more primal. It resonated with something inside him, like a distant melody finally heard clearly. Kurama, Naruto called inwardly, seeking the familiar presence of the 9 tails. Nothing answered. Instead of the fox's chamber, his mindscape revealed a vast crystalline structure, a throne made of what appeared to be solidified light. Surrounded by 9 orbs of swirling energy, each sphere contained fragments of what looked like memories, but none were his own. A sudden pressure pulled him back to awareness. Something was approaching, multiple somethings. The sensation was unmistakable despite being unfamiliar, predators circling wounded prey. 3 white masked creatures crested a nearby dune. They moved with unnatural fluidity. Bone-white masks featuring identical grins despite their differing forms. The smallest resembled a mantis with blade-like appendages, the second, a hulking gorilla-like entity with massive fists. The third had the sinuous body of a serpent but walked upright on powerful legs. "Fresh meat," hissed the serpentine one, its voice grating like metal on stone. And such strange ryutsu. Not Shinigami, not Urankar. What are you, little morsel? Naruto's combat instincts flared instantly. He reached for his chakra, finding it transformed, interwoven with this strange new energy. When he attempted to create shadow clones, what manifested instead were 3 perfect copies that seemed more substantial than any clone he'd ever created, radiating the same pressure as the masked creatures. The mantis thing screeched, lunging forward with blinding speed. "I'll devour you first." Naruto moved without thinking, his body responding with reflexes beyond what he remembered possessing. His palm connected with the creature's mask, and on contact, golden light erupted from the point of impact. Cracks spider webbed across the white surface before the entire mask shattered. The creature didn't disintegrate as expected. Instead, its form stabilized, the hole in its chest closing as it collapsed to the sand, unconscious but transformed. "What did you do?" The gorilla creature backed away, its previous confidence evaporating. "That's impossible. You purified a hollow without destroying it." "Hollow," Naruto repeated, the term triggering something, a memory that wasn't his own. Hollows, empty souls, devours, the eternal hunger, the white sands of Hueco Mundo. "He's dangerous," the serpent hissed. "We should." Naruto didn't let it finish. Moving faster than he ever had before, he appeared behind the serpent, hand pressed against its mask. The same golden light flared, and the result was identical. The mask cracked away, revealing a humanoid face beneath as the creature collapsed. The gorilla hollow roared, massive fists swinging in desperation. Naruto caught the blow with one hand, surprised by his own strength. This body, whatever it had become, possessed power beyond anything he'd known, and he'd once traded blows with beings who could destroy mountains with a gesture. "What are you?" the hollow demanded, fear evident despite its monstrous form. Naruto looked into its masked face and felt knowledge surfacing from somewhere deep inside. not his memories, but belonging to him nonetheless. I am the Soul King reborn, he said, words emerging without conscious thought. And you will serve a greater purpose than endless hunger. His hand connected with the mask, and golden light consumed the hollow. As the light faded, all three creatures lay unconscious, masks gone. Bodies stabilized into forms that were neither fully human nor entirely monstrous, something in between. Naruto staggered, suddenly exhausted. Whatever he'd done had drained him considerably. He looked at the three transformed hollows, somehow knowing they would awaken different, the hunger diminished, rationality restored. In the distance, a massive structure rose from the desert, a crumbling fortress of white stone. Something pulled him toward it, a resonance that felt like destiny. Las Noches, he whispered, the name appearing in his mind. The Hollow King's palace. Before he could move toward it, a new pressure washed over the desert, immense, suffocating, and filled with rage. From behind a distant dune rose a towering figure nearly 30 feet tall. Its mask resembled a demonic bull, and its body rippled with muscles beneath bone-white armor. 6 arms ended in massive cleavers made of the same material as its mask. I sense the Soul King's fragment, it bellowed, voice reverberating across the desert. Give it to me, little intruder, and your death will be quick. Naruto felt no fear, only a strange calm certainty. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm not giving you anything except a serious attitude adjustment. The massive hollow laughed, the sound like thunder. You speak bravely for one about to die. I am Gorgamor, the Vasto Lord who will become king of this realm. It moved with shocking speed for its size, all 6 cleavers descending in a pattern designed to prevent escape. Naruto didn't dodge, something inside told him not to. Instead, he raised his hand, and a translucent barrier of golden energy materialized, catching all 6 blades simultaneously. The hollow's masked face registered shock. Impossible. Naruto pushed back, sending the creature staggering. Energy coursed through him, not chakra exactly, but something both familiar and alien. He could feel it responding to his will, shaping itself according to his intent. When he extended his arm, golden chains erupted from his palm, wrapping around the massive hollow and constraining its movements. These chains, Gorgamor gasped. The Soul King's chains of binding. Naruto approached the restrained hollow. Curious. You keep mentioning this Soul King. Who is he? The hollow's laughter turned bitter. Playing ignorant. The Soul King is the linchpin of existence, the Bin. G who separates and maintains the balance between worlds. His power is scattered, and I will claim it all. Without warning, the hollow's body began bulging grotesquely, Ryutsu intensifying. The chains strained as Gorgamor grew larger, its mask elongating into something even more monstrous. Segunda etapa, it roared. My perfect form. The chains shattered, and the transformed hollow lunged, moving twice as fast as before. One massive cleaver caught Naruto across the chest, tearing through his strange robes and drawing blood that glowed with the same golden light that had transformed the smaller hollows. Pain lanced through him, but with it came clarity. Memories, not his own but belonging to him now, flashed through his consciousness. He saw worlds suspended in balance. The Soul King on his crystal throne. Fragments scattered across dimensions. A war between Shinigami and Quincy. The separation of worlds. I see, Naruto whispered, understanding flowing through him. I'm not just Naruto Uzumaki anymore, am I? The hollow paused, sensing the change. You're Ryutsu, it's stabilizing. Naruto closed his eyes, accepting what he had become. When he opened them again, they glowed with golden light. Pupils transformed into a pattern that combined the Rinnegan's concentric circles with something new, triangular patterns that intersected with the circles. I am Naruto Uzumaki, he declared, voice resonating with power. Shinobi of the Hidden Leaf, Jinchuriki of the 9 Tails, and Reincarnation of the Soul King. And you, Gorgamor, will not become king of anything. He moved faster than thought. Golden energy trailing from his hands like liquid light. Each strike connected with one of the hollow's 6 arms, shattering the bone-white cleavers. The creature howled in rage and pain, trying to regenerate its weapons. But Naruto was already behind it, palm pressed against its massive back. This might hurt, Naruto said, almost apologetically. I'm still figuring this out. Golden energy erupted from his hand. not merely cracking the hollow's mask but consuming its entire form in brilliant light. When the radiance faded, where the towering monster had stood was a humanoid figure no larger than Naruto himself. Unconscious on the sand, the mask was gone, replaced by human features with faint bone-like markings around the temples. Naruto dropped to one knee, the exertion overwhelming him. Using these powers was different from chakra, it seemed to draw directly from his life force rather than an external energy system. He needed to understand his limitations before attempting something like that again. Looking toward Las Noches, he knew that's where answers waited. Pushing himself upright, he began walking through the endless desert, leaving 4 transformed hollows sleeping in his wake. 3 days passed in the eternal night of Hueco Mundo. Naruto had encountered dozens more hollows, some he'd been forced to transform, others fled at the mere sense of his approaching presence. With each passing hour, the Soul King's memories became more accessible, though they remained fragmentary and incomplete. Las Noches loomed closer now, its massive white walls stretching impossibly high. Parts of the structure lay in ruins, evidence of some tremendous battle that had occurred here not long ago. He could sense presences inside, some powerful, others barely registering. As he approached the main gate, a massive archway partially collapsed, a new sensation washed over him. Pain, suffering, a powerful entity in distress. Changing direction, Naruto followed this sensation, circling the enormous fortress until he reached an area where the outer wall had completely collapsed. Beyond it lay what appeared to be a prison complex, cells carved from the same white material as the fortress itself. Many damaged or destroyed, the suffering emanated from the deepest cell, where spiritual pressure fluctuated weakly but distinctly. Naruto navigated the debris, passing empty cells until reaching the source of the distress. Inside the final cell, suspended by glowing red chains, hung a woman with dark skin and short blonde hair. Her face was partially covered by what appeared to be a remnant of a hollow mask, just enough to cover her mouth and jaw. She wore tattered white clothing that resembled the top half of a uniform, revealing a hollow hole at her sternum. Despite her weakened state, the spiritual pressure radiating from her was immense. Their eyes met, hers teal and filled with defiance despite her condition. "Another torturer?" she asked, voice muffled by the mask fragment but still carrying authority. "Or have you come to finish what Baragon's loyalists started?" Naruto approached the barrier separating them. "Neither. I'm new here." "Who are you?" A harsh laugh escaped her. "New to Hueco Mundo. Impossible. You're either a hollow, a Shinigami, or..." She narrowed her eyes, studying him. "You're neither. What are you?" Complicated question, Naruto replied honestly. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Until recently, I was a shinobi from a different world. Now I seem to be something else." "Who imprisoned you?" She studied him silently before answering. "Those loyal to the old regime. After Aizen's defeat, power vacuums formed. As Tercera Espada, I was targeted. My Frakken were scattered or killed. I am Harribel." Naruto examined the glowing chains. They resembled Bakudo, Kido binding spells from Soul Society, according to the Soul King's memories. Designed specifically to contain powerful Arankar. "Why would they keep you alive?" he asked. "My power," she answered simply. "They drain it gradually. The process is unpleasant." Without hesitation, Naruto placed his hand against the barrier. Golden light flowed from his fingertips, identifying and unraveling the spiritual structure of the prison. The barrier dissolved like mist before sunlight. Harribel's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of her surprise. "Those barriers were created by Aizen himself," she said. "How did you?" "I told you." Complicated. Naruto reached for the red chains binding her. As his fingers touched them, they reacted violently, lashing out with crimson energy that scorched his skin. Harribel watched him curiously. "They're designed to respond to foreign ryutsu. You won't be able to." Naruto closed his eyes, drawing on the Soul King's knowledge. The chains were indeed Bakudo. But they had been modified, corrupted with hollow ryutsu to make them more painful and efficient at energy extraction. "Let's try something else," he muttered. Rather than attempting to destroy the chains, he placed his palm against one and allowed his energy, a mixture of his chakra and the Soul King's power, to flow into it. Instead of fighting the chains, he sought harmony with them. understanding their nature and purpose. The red chains gradually shifted color, turning from crimson to orange to gold. When they had completely transformed, they simply fell away, dissolving into particles of light. Harribel dropped to the ground, catching herself with dignified grace despite her weakened state. She regarded Naruto with cautious interest. "Your power," she began. "We should leave," Naruto interrupted. "Can you walk?" She straightened to her full height, which placed her just slightly taller than him. "I have been Tercera Espada under Lord Aizen and survived the Winter War. This is nothing." Despite her words, Naruto could sense her depleted spiritual energy. Without comment, he moved to her side, offering support that she accepted after a moment's hesitation. "There are others imprisoned here," she said as they moved through the ruined complex. "We'll come back for them," Naruto promised. "But first I need to get you somewhere safe. I can sense others approaching, strong ones." They had barely exited the prison area when the air thickened with pressure. 5 figures appeared on the broken wall above them, each wearing partial hollow masks and carrying weapons of various designs. Their leader, a tall figure with a mask fragment covering his left eye, stepped forward. "Harribel," he called down. "How disappointing. We had such plans for your power." Naruto felt Harribel tense beside him. "Arturo," she acknowledged coldly. "Still serving whichever master offers the best terms." The one called Arturo laughed, the sound lacking any warmth. "Currently, I serve myself. Las Noches needs a king, and your power was to be my coronation gift." His gaze shifted to Naruto. "And what have we here?" "Something new. Your Ryutsu is unusual." "I get that a lot," Naruto replied, gently moving Harribel behind him. "Look, we're leaving. You can either step aside or learn why that's the smart choice." Arturo's single visible eye narrowed. Such confidence from someone so outnumbered. "Kill him. Recapture Harribel." The 4 subordinates launched forward simultaneously, each approaching from a different angle. Naruto didn't move, didn't even shift his stance. Instead, he allowed his spiritual pressure to expand outward in a controlled wave. All 4 attackers froze mid-motion, eyes widening as they struggled against the invisible force holding them in place. "What is this?" One choked out. "This," Naruto said calmly, "is a fraction of what I can do. Last chance to reconsider." Arturo's composure cracked. "Impossible. No one controls spiritual pressure with such precision." Naruto released the 4 Arankar with a gesture, sending them tumbling back. "I'm not interested in fighting you. We're leaving now. You think I'll simply allow this?" Arturo snarled, drawing his sword. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Someone about to make a serious mistake," Harribel answered, stepping forward despite her weakened condition. Arturo vanished, reappearing directly behind Naruto with his blade descending. "Die, interloper." The sword never connected. Naruto had moved faster than even Arturo could track, appearing behind the Arankar with Hai's hand resting lightly on Arturo's shoulder. "You know," Naruto said conversationally, "where I come from. I was known for giving enemies multiple chances to walk away. It was kind of my thing." Gold and energy began flowing from his fingers into Arturo's body. "I'm still figuring out how things work here, but I think that principle still applies." Arturo tried to pull away, but his body refused to respond. The golden energy spread across his skin like liquid light, seeping into his very being. "What are you doing to me?" he gasped. "Showing you a truth," Naruto answered. "Every hollow was once human. That humanity still exists within you, buried beneath hunger and pain. I'm just helping you remember." The golden light intensified, and Arturo screamed, not in pain but in something closer to revelation. When the light faded, he dropped to his knees, his remaining mask fragment cracking but not completely disappearing. What did you do?" he whispered, touching his face with trembling fingers. "Balanced you," Naruto replied, "your hollow nature and your human soul. You'll find your hunger diminished and your mind clearer." The other 4 Arankar backed away, watching their leader with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. "Go," Naruto told them. "Think about who you want to be in this world. When you decide, you can find me here at Las Noches." They disappeared in rapid succession. Using Sonido to retreat, Arturo remained kneeling, still processing his transformation. "That was unwise," Harribel commented quietly. You've exhausted yourself for someone who would have killed you without hesitation. Naruto shrugged. Maybe, but everyone deserves a chance to be more than what pain has made them. Harribel studied him with new interest. You are, unlike anyone I've encountered in Hueco Mundo. Or anywhere else. I'm still figuring out exactly what I am, Naruto admitted. But I know what I'm not. I'm not someone who leaves others to suffer when I can help. For the first time, something resembling softness entered Harribel's eyes. Then perhaps Las Noches has finally found a worthy king. Yoruichi Shihoin had seen many strange things in her centuries as a Shinigami. But the readings coming from Hueco Mundo surpassed them all. Captain Yukitake had summoned her specifically for this mission, unofficial, unrecorded, and potentially dangerous even for someone of her capabilities. Something is happening in Hueco Mundo, he had told her, voice grave despite his gentle smile. Energy signatures unlike anything our instruments have ever detected. The head captain believes it might be related to fragments of the Soul King. Now, moving through the endless white desert with the silent speed that had earned her the title, Flash Goddess, Yoruichi understood Yukitake's concern. The spiritual pressure permeating Hueco Mundo had changed, becoming more ordered, almost harmonious. Hollows still roamed the sands, but something was directing their movements, civilizing them. Las Noches loomed ahead, its broken dome partially restored with a material that resembled crystal more than stone. New structures had begun to appear around its perimeter, organized. Purposeful construction that no hollow society had ever displayed before. She paused on a distant dune, golden eyes narrowing as she surveyed the fortress. Dozens of spiritual pressures registered within, Urankar, hollows. And something else, something that resonated with her own Shinigami essence but felt fundamentally different. Well, she murmured to herself, this certainly explains the panic in Central 46. Using Flash Step, she approached the western wall where construction appeared less complete. Guards patrolled in organized patterns, a mix of humanoid Urankar and partially Ma. Sked hollows working in coordinated units. Their behavior was unprecedented. Hollows were solitary predators by nature, not cooperative security forces. Yoruichi slipped past them effortlessly, her CE. Entries of stealth experience rendering her virtually undetectable. Once inside the perimeter, she moved through reconstructed corridors, gathering intelligence with each passing moment. The interior of Las Noches had been completely transformed. Gone were Aizen's sterile white halls and artificial skies. In their place stood open spaces filled with gardens of crystalline plants that seemed to thrive without sunlight. Hollows of various types moved purposefully through these spaces, engaged in activities ranging from construction to what appeared to be meditation. Fascinating, she whispered, watching a group of lesser hollows practicing controlled manipulation of their spiritual pressure under the guidance of an Urankar. It is, isn't it? The voice came from directly behind her, impossible. Since no one had ever successfully detected her while she was concealing her presence. Yoruichi spun, instinctively dropping into a fighting stance. A young man stood there, blonde hair, strange whisker-like markings on his cheeks. And eyes that shifted between blue and an impossible gold pattern. He wore white robes with black geometric patterns that resembled no uniform from Soul Society or Hueco Mundo. You're good, he said with an appreciative grin. Really good. I almost didn't sense you until you stopped moving. Yoruichi maintained her stance but allowed her spiritual pressure to rise slightly, a warning. And who might you be? The young man's smile widened. Naruto Uzumaki, formerly of Konoha. Currently, he gestured at their surroundings, figuring things out. And you're from Soul Society. Judging by your Ryutsu signature. Though you're not wearing their uniform. Yoruichi Shihoin, she replied, deciding that concealment was pointless now. Former captain of the Sec. OND division and commander of the Onmitsukido. Former. Naruto tilted his head curiously. Sounds like there's a story there. Despite herself, Yoruichi felt her lips quirk upward. There was something disarmingly genuine about this strange being, whoever, whatever, he was. Many stories, she replied, relaxing her stance slightly. But I'm more interested in yours. What exactly are you doing in Hueco Mundo, Naruto Uzumaki? And what have you done to Las Noches? Giving it purpose, he answered simply. making it something better than a fortress for a madman or a battleground for power-hungry Urankar. You've been busy, Yoruichi observed. Reports started reaching Soul Society only weeks ago about changes in hollow behavior. You've accomplished all of this in such a short time. Naruto shrugged. Time works differently here, I've noticed. Or maybe it's me that's different. But yes, it's been about 3 months since I arrived. Yoruichi's eyes widened slightly. 3 months was indeed remarkably fast to transform Las Noches so completely. And the purpose of these changes? Balance, Naruto said, his expression growing more serious. Hueco Mundo isn't just a wasteland for monsters, Yoruichi. It's 1/3 of the cosmic balance. The Soul King understood that. That's why he created the separation of worlds in the first place. The mention of the Soul King sent a chill through Yoruichi. And how would you know the Soul King's intentions? Naruto met her gaze steadily, his eyes shifting fully to that strange golden pattern. Because part of me is him. Reincarnated, fragmented, but present. I didn't ask for it. But here we are. For a moment, Yoruichi considered attacking. A being claiming to be the Soul King reincarnated was exactly the kind of threat Central 46 feared most. But something held her back. His spiritual pressure, while immense, lacked any hint of malice or deception. I should take you to Soul Society, she said, testing his reaction. You could try, Naruto replied. Not as a threat but as a simple statement of fact. But I have work to finish here first. Besides, I'm not sure your Central 46 would be thrilled to meet me. From what I've gathered from the Soul King's memories, they prefer him distant and controlled. Yoruichi couldn't deny the truth in his words. What are your intentions toward Soul Society? Coexistence, he answered without hesitation. Balance. The 3 worlds, human world, Soul Society, and Hueco Mundo, they're meant to be in harmony, not conflict. Aizen understood that the system was flawed but chose domination as his solution. I'm trying something different. Before Yoruichi could respond, a newcomer entered the garden, the former Tercera Espada, Harribel, looking remarkably recovered from what intelligence had eined. Ikaded was imprisonment by rival Urankar factions. Naruto, she acknowledged with a nod before turning cool teal eyes to Yoruichi. A Shinigami, should I be concerned? Just a conversation, Naruto assured her. Yoruichi here is gathering intelligence, trying to figure out what's happening in Hueco Mundo. And what conclusions have you reached? Harribel asked Yoruichi directly. Yoruichi studied them both, the former Espada standing comfortably beside the strange being claiming Soul King heritage. There was no subservience in Harribel's manner, but rather a palpable respect. That I need to see more before making any report, Yoruichi answered truthfully. Naruto's smile returned. Then allow me to give you the tour. Harribel, would you mind informing the others we have a guest? I promise. Ino Garganta will open to allow invasion forces. Harribel nodded once and departed, her movements betraying none of the injuries she must have suffered during her imprisonment. She's loyal to you, Yoruichi observed as they began walking. Not to me, Naruto corrected. To what we're building here. Harribel has always been protective of her Fracken, of female Urankar in general. She sees potential in a Hueco Mundo that's more than just an endless battlefield. As they moved through Las Noches, Yoruichi witnessed things she would never have believed possible, hollows engaged in creative endeavors. Constructing not just functional spaces but beautiful ones. Urankar working together on projects requiring cooperation and planning. Manos Grande being guided rather than simply controlled or destroyed. In what had once been Aizen's throne room, a massive crystal structure now stood, not a throne but something closer to a natural formation, pulsing with gentle light that somehow felt nourishing rather than oppressive. What is that? Yoruichi asked, drawn to its rhythmic glow. A stabilizer, Naruto explained. It helps balance the spiritual pressure across Hueco Mundo, making it easier for hollows to maintain their sanity without consuming others. It's not perfect yet. They still need to feed, but less frequently and less destructively. Yoruichi approached the crystal, feeling its energy resonate with her own spiritual pressure. This technology isn't from Soul Society or the human world. No, Naruto agreed. It's from the Soul King's knowledge, adapted through my understanding of chakra from my original world. A bridge between systems of power. And that's what you're creating here, Yoruichi realized. A bridge, a new way for Hueco Mundo to exist without being a threat to the other realms. Naruto nodded. Exactly. The hollow nature doesn't have to be pure destruction and consumption. There's potential for something more. A distant explosion interrupted their conversation, the entire structure trembling slightly. Naruto's expression shifted instantly from contemplative to alert. We're under attack, he said, closing his eyes briefly to sense the spiritual pressures converging on Las Noches. A lot of them. Vasto Lord class, leading lesser hollows. Yoruichi tensed. Rival faction. The Shadowmoon Coalition, Naruto confirmed. They've been gathering street, ranked in the far reaches of Hueco Mundo. Led by a Vasto Lord called Mordrath who believes Hueco Mundo should remain a realm of pure predation. He glanced at Yoruichi. Care to see how we handle security? Without waiting for an answer, he vanished in a flash of movement that even Yoruichi, the Flash Goddess, found impressive. She followed, curious to see this self-proclaimed Soul King Reincarnation in action. They arrived at the western perimeter where a massive breach had been torn in the outer wall. Dozens of hollows poured through, led by 3 imposing figures with spiritual pressure that marked them as Vasto Lord. Harribel was already there, her sealed Zanpakuto drawn but not yet released, cutting down lesser hollows with efficient precision. Naruto Uzumaki, bellowed the central Vasto Lord, a towering figure with a mask resembling a demonic wolf. Your abomination ends today. Hueco Mundo will return to the natural order. Mordrath, Naruto greeted calmly, stepping forward. I've invited you to join us 3 times. This response is disappointing but not surprising. The Vasto Lord laughed harshly. Join you. Watch you pervert our nature with your talk of balance and restraint. Hollows are meant to devour. To evolve through consumption. Your way makes us weak. You've confused cruelty with strength, Naruto replied. A common mistake. Mordrath roared, spiritual pressure exploding outward as he charged. The other 2 Vasto Lord flanked him, coordinating their attack with surprising strategy for hollows. Yoruichi prepared to enter the fight, but found herself hesitating, not out of fear, but fascination. She wanted to see what Naruto could do. She wasn't disappointed. As the 3 Vasto Lord converged on him, Naruto remained perfectly still until the last possible moment. Then, with movements too fast for even her experienced eyes to fully track, he sidestepped Mordrath's charge while simultaneously catching the arms of the other 2 attackers. Golden light erupted from his hands, flowing into the captured Vasto Lord. They screamed, not in pain but in shock, as their masks began to crack and reform, becoming smaller, more refined. Their spiritual shore fluctuated wildly before stabilizing at an even higher level than before. When he released them, they staggered back, touching their transformed masks in confusion. What did you do to us? One gasped. Evolved you, Naruto answered, but not through consumption, through balance. Mordrath halted his attack, watching in horror as his lieutenants examined their transformed state. You've corrupted them, actually, one of the transformed Vasto Lords said, voice steadier and more articulate than before. I feel clearer. The hunger is still there, but it no longer controls me. Traitors, Mordrath howled, gathering dark energy in his clawed hands. Then you'll die with him. The attack he launched was devastating, a crimson Sero of immense proportions, aimed not just at Naruto and the transformed Vasto Lord, but at the entire western section of Las Noches. The destructive beam would kill dozens of hollows and a Rancor still evacuating the area. Yoruichi moved to intercept, but Naruto was faster. He stepped directly into the Sero's path, hands raised. Instead of blocking or deflecting the attack, he caught it, literally cupping the destructive energy between his palms like water. The Sero compressed, shrinking from a building-sized blast to a sphere no larger than a basketball. The concentrated energy pulsed between Naruto's hands, its color shifting from crimson to violet to gold. Power without purpose is just noise, Mordrath, Naruto said, his voice cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over the battlefield. Let me show you something better. He raised the transformed Sero above his head, where it expanded not into a destructive beam but an intricate network of golden energy that spread across the damaged section of Las Noches. Where the energy touched, broken structures began to repair themselves, white stone reforming and strengthening. Mordrath backed away, mask unable to hide his shock. Impossible. No one can transform a Sero into creation energy. No one. I'm not no one, Naruto replied simply. I'm the Soul King reborn in a shinobi's body, and I'm offering you one last chance to join something greater than endless hunger. For a moment, it seemed Mordrath might actually consider the offer. Then his spiritual pressure darkened, condensing around him like a shroud. Never. I'd rather die than become your neutered pet. He launched himself at Naruto. Moving faster than before, claws extended. Naruto sighed, looking genuinely regretful, and raised one hand. As you wish. A single beam of golden light erupted from his palm, piercing directly through Mordrath's mask. The Vasto Lord froze mid-attack, then slowly dissolved, not into spirit particles as hollows normally did when destroyed, but into pure white light that floated upward before disappearing. Seeing their leader defeated, the remaining attacking hollows scattered, many dropping to their knees in submission. Harribel sheathed her Zanpakuto, approaching Naruto with an expression that might have been concern on anyone else. You used too much power, she observed quietly. The transformation technique, then catching the Sero, then the purification, it's draining you. Naruto offered a tired smile. I'm still calibrating. This body and the Soul King's power don't always agree on how much energy to use. Yoruichi had seen enough. This was no ordinary being. Not even by the standards of Soul Society. His abilities transcended both Shinigami and Hollow powers, combining them with something entirely foreign. This, chakra, he had mentioned. You're creating something entirely new here, she said, approaching them. Not Soul Society. Not the old Hueco Mundo. Something balanced between worlds. Naruto nodded. That's the goal. The Soul King understood the necessity of boundaries between worlds, but those boundaries don't have to mean eternal conflict. Central 46 won't see it that way, Yoruichi warned. They'll view you as a threat to the cosmic order. And what do you see? Naruto asked, his strange eyes studying her with unexpected intensity. Yoruichi found herself smiling, a genuine expression that had become rare during her years of exile. Potential, and the most interesting development in 3 worlds in several centuries. Will you report back to Soul Society? Harribel asked, her tone making clear she expected betrayal. Eventually, Yoruichi answered honestly. But my report will be to those I trust, not Central 46. And I think I need to see more before I can accurately describe what's happening here. She looked directly at Naruto. If that's acceptable to Hueco Mundo's new king. Naruto laughed, the sound surprisingly warm in the stark white landscape. I'm not calling myself king. Just trying to build something worthwhile. Nevertheless, Harribel interjected, you command the loyalty of Arrancar who followed no one but Aizen, and Hollows who have never followed anyone. If that isn't a king, what is? Naruto appeared uncomfortable with the designation but didn't argue further. Instead, he turned to Yoruichi. Stay as long as you like. See everything. Ask questions. I have nothing to hide. As they walked back toward the central fortress, Yoruichi observed the interaction between Naruto and Harribel, the subtle shift in the Arrancar's typically cold demeanor when addressing him, the protective positio. Ningshi maintained despite his obvious power. There was something there beyond mere alliance or even respect. Interesting, Yoruichi thought. Very interesting indeed. Dreams came to Naruto that night, more vivid than any before. He stood in a vast crystalline chamber, suspended between worlds. A fragmented figure sat upon a throne of light, incomplete, constantly shifting between forms, yet unmistakably regal. You are making progress, the figure said, its voice resonating through Naruto's very being. Faster than I anticipated. Who are you? Naruto asked, though he already knew. I am what remains of the Soul King. The figure replied, and I am you, as you are becoming me. Not a replacement, but a renewal. Why me? Naruto demanded. Of all people across worlds, why choose a shinobi? The fragmented king's form stabilized slightly, revealing features that somehow resembled Naruto's own while remaining distinctly different. Because you understand balance. You contained the greats, tea of the tailed beasts without becoming consumed by its power. You reconciled hatred with forgiveness. You understand that true peace comes not from domination but harmony. Images flashed through the crystal chamber, Naruto's battles. His growth, his unwavering commitment to protecting others even at personal cost. Alongside these memories appeared others, the Soul King's creation of the worlds, the establishment of balance. The gradual fragmentation of his power and consciousness. Aizen sought to replace me through conquest, the Soul King continued. Yoruichi sought to absorb me through dominance. Both understood the flaws in the system but chose the wrong solution. You have the potential to find a better way. By ruling Hueco Mundo, Naruto asked skeptically. By transforming it, the king corrected. By creating harmony where there has only been conflict. The hollows are not inherently evil, they are souls in pain, consumed by hunger and emptiness. You have already begun to show them another path. Naruto considered this, and Soul Society, the Shinigami, will resist, the king acknowledged. Change frightens those who have maintained power through static systems. But not all Shinigami think as Central 46 does. Your visitor today, the Flash Goddess, she sees beyond their limitations. Yoruichi, Naruto murmured. There had been something compelling about the former captain, a directness and adaptability that reminded him of the best shinobi from his world. She will be important, the Soul King confirmed. As will the former Espada who now stands at your side. xHarribel understands sacrifice and protection in ways few hollows ever have. The crystal chamber began to fade, the Soul King's form growing more transparent. Our time grows short. As you integrate more of my power, these communications will become less necessary. Remember, Naruto Uzumaki, balance is not stasis. True balance is dynamic, constantly adjusting, allowing for growth and change while preventing collapse into chaos. Wait, Naruto called as the dream began dissolving. There's still so much I don't understand. The Soul King's final words echoed as the crystal throne room vanished complete. Ili. Understanding comes through action, not contemplation. Trust the path you walk, Soul King reborn. Naruto awoke in his quarters at Las Noches, golden light fading from his eyes. Outside his window, the eternal crescent moon of Hueco Mundo cast silver light across the transformed fortress. In the distance, he could sense the spiritual pressures of thousands of hollows, some still wild and hungry. Others gradually changing under his influence. And closer, within Las Noches itself, he felt Harribel's steady presence and Yoruichi's more vibrant energy. Different worlds, different natures, but each now connected to his own fate in ways he was only beginning to understand. Soul King reborn, he whispered to himself, testing the weight of the title. It felt simultaneously foreign and familiar, like his status as Jinchuriki had once felt, both burden and blessing. He rose and moved to the window, looking out over the white sands of Hueco Mundo, his new domain, by choice or destiny. Whatever came next, he would face it as he always had, with determination, compassion, and an unwavering belief that even the deepest darkness could be transformed by the right kind of light. Chapter 2. Crowns and Crossroads. 6 months transformed Las Noches beyond recognition. What once stood as Aizen's stark fortress of oppression now rose from Hueco Mundo's endless sands as a crystalline metropolis, Organi. Sea architecture spiraling upward in impossible configurations that somehow harmonized with the eternal desert night. Naruto stood atop the highest spire, overlooking his domain. Below, thousands of lows and Arankar moved through the streets and open plazas in orderly fashion. Markets had formed where they exchanged not food, though some still required it, but items of spiritual significance, crystallized fragments of Ryutsu. Bones from ancient Manos, and artifacts salvaged from the deepest reaches of the desert. Admiring your handiwork, Yoruichi's voice carried the hint of amusement that had become familiar over the past months. She materialized beside him in a flash of movement, golden eyes gleaming in the perpetual moonlight. Just thinking about how much has changed, Naruto replied. Sometimes I still expect to wake up in Konoha. Yoruichi studied him with the penetrating gaze that had intimidated countless subordinates during her captaincy. You've built something unprecedented here. Even the oldest records in Soul Society don't describe a Hueco Mundo with this level of civilization. Civilization implies civility, came Harribel's measured observation as she joined them on the spire. Unlike Yoruichi, who moved with explosive bursts of speed, the former Espada approached with deliberate grace, her presence announced by the steady pressure of her formidable Ryutsu. We still face considerable resistance from those who prefer the old ways. The Vasto Rebellion? Naruto asked, turning toward her. Harribel nodded once. They've established a stronghold in the forest of Manos. My Fracken report increasing numbers flocking to their banner. Your Fracken returned safely, I hope. His concern was genuine. He'd grown fond of Harribel's 3 loyal followers, Apache, Mila Rose, and Sung Sun. Yes, Harribel confirmed, something almost like warmth flickering in her teal eyes. Sung Sun was particularly effective. Her ability to conceal her presence allowed her to gather more detailed intelligence than the others. Yoruichi leaned against a crystalline buttress, her casual posture belying the alertness Naruto had learned never truly left her. The rebellion isn't your only problem. Soul Society has finally formalized their response to your little kingdom here. Naruto groaned. Let me guess, they're not sending a welcoming committee. Actually, they are, Yoruichi corrected with a mischievous grin. Just not the kind that brings housewarming gifts. Captains Hitsugaya and Kiraku are leading a diplomatic contingent that arrives tomorrow. 2 captains, Harribel noted, her hand instinctively moving to her Zanpakuto's hilt. They anticipate resistance. They're being cautious, Yoruichi countered. Sending captains is actually a sign of respect. If they viewed this as a simple problem, they'd have dispatched seated officers. Naruto absorbed this information, golden energy briefly flickering in his eyes as he accessed the Soul King's memories. Captain Toshiro Hitsugaya, the prodigy, youngest captain in Soul Society's history, wielder of the Ice Dragon Hyarinmaru. Captain Shunsui Kiraku, one of the oldest and most powerful Shinigami alive. Deceptively casual demeanor hiding lethal capability and unparalleled tactical intelligence. They're sending ice and shadows, he murmured. Interesting combination. They're also bringing substantial support staff, Yoruichi added, including Lieutenant Rangaku Matsumoto. Something stirred in the Soul King's memories at that name, a flash of strawberry blonde hair, a connection to something important. Before Naruto could fully grasp it, the memory slipped away. We'll receive them properly, he decided. No hostility unless they initiate it. This could be an opportunity to establish actual dialogue. Harribel's expression remained skeptical. Soul Society has never viewed Hueco Mundo as anything but a threat to be contained. They tolerated Aizen's reign because he maintained a certain predictable order. What you've created here challenges their entire worldview. Maybe it's time their worldview evolved, Naruto replied, his voice carrying the quiet determination that had gradually replaced his youthful brashness. The Soul King understood that balance between realms wasn't meant to be static separation, but dynamic harmony. Before either woman could respond, a ripple of turbance passed through Los Noches' spiritual fabric. Naruto turned, immediately pinpointing the source, the eastern quadrant, where the medical facilities had been established. Nalil, he said simply, already moving. Yoruichi and Harribel exchanged a glance before following, each in their own distinctive manner. By the time they arrived at the crystalline structure housing the medical division, a crowd had already gathered outside. Apache, the most volatile of Harribel's Fracken, was actively restraining several curious Arankar. Back off, you vultures! She snapped, heterochromatic eyes flashing with irritation. Master Naruto will handle this. Apache, Harribel addressed her subordinate calmly. Report. The deer-like Arankar straightened immediately. Lady Harribel, it's the child Espada. She started transforming about 20 minutes ago. Her spiritual pressure keeps fluctuating wildly. Sung Sun is inside monitoring the situation. Naruto didn't wait for further explanation, ushing through the doors into the facility. Inside, the normally orderly space was in disarray, medical equipment scattered, monitoring crystals pulsing with erratic energy. In the central chamber, a small figure writhed on an examination table, surrounded by a cyclone of teal-colored Ryutsu. Sung Sun, the most composed of Harribel's Fracken, stood nearby, her sleeve-covered hand maintaining a keto-like barrier around the disturbance. Her serpentine eyes met Naruto's immediately. Her adult form is trying to reassert itself, she explained, her voice maintaining its customary measured tone despite the strain evident in her posture. The spiritual sutures Aizen placed to suppress her true form are failing, but the process appears traumatic. Naruto approached the table where the childlike Nell thrashed in apparent agony. her broken hollow mask leaking energy from its crack. Though she appeared as a small child, Naruto had learned months ago that Nalil Tu Odelschwenk had once been the T. Ursera Espada before Harribel, a warrior of tremendous power whose form had been forcibly regressed by a treacherous attack. Nell, he said softly, placing his hand near hers without touching. Can you hear me? The child's eyes flew open, hazel irises swimming with confusion and pain. Hurts. Nell, hurts everywhere. I know, Naruto replied, his voice steady and reassuring. Your true self is trying to return. The pain comes from fighting it. But Nell doesn't want. Her words cut off as another spasm racked her small body, spiritual pressure spiking violently. Yoruichi appeared at Naruto's side, assessing the situation with practiced efficiency. Her spiritual pathways are tangled. The regression wasn't just physical, it fragmented her spiritual network. Harribel observed from a few paces back, her analytical gaze taking in every detail. Neutra's attack was specifically designed to shatter her mask in a way that would cause permanent regression. It shouldn't be reversing spontaneously. Unless something has been influencing her spiritual pressure, Sung-sun suggested, her eyes shifting meaningfully toward Naruto. Something that encourages evolution. Naruto understood immediately. Over the past 6 months, his presence, the Soul King's essence merged with his own unique chakra, had been gradually affecting all of Hueco Mundo. Hollows were developing greater self-awareness. Arrancar were discovering new aspects to their abilities, and the entire spiritual ecosystem was shifting towards something more balanced. Nell's proximity to this influence, especially during her frequent visits to Las Noches, had apparently triggered something in her damaged spiritual structure. I can help, he said with quiet confidence, looking to Yoruichi and Harribel. But I'll need assistance stabilizing the transition. Yoruichi nodded, already moving to position herself at the foot of the table. I can redirect excess spiritual pressure if it spikes too high. I will ensure no lasting damage occurs to her mask fragment. Harribel added, taking position at Nell's head. The connection between an Arrancar's mask and their core identity is delicate. Naruto placed both hands above Nell's small form, allowing golden energy to gather between his palms. Unlike his previous interventions with hollows, which had focused on balancing their dual nature, this required something more précis. Say, reconstruction of spiritual pathways while preserving the essence of who Nalil truly was. Nell, he addressed the child gently. This might feel strange, but I need you to stop fighting the change. Your adult form isn't something separate from you, it is you, the complete you. The child's fearful eyes met his. But will Nell still be Nell? Nell doesn't want to disappear. Naruto smiled reassuringly. You won't disappear. You'll just become more fully yourself. I promise. After a moment's hesitation, the child nodded, tears streaming down her face as she visibly relaxed into the painful transformation. The moment she stopped resisting, Naruto released the gathered energy, directing it into her spiritual core in a precise pattern that mimicked healthy spiritual pathways. Golden light suffused Nell's form, lifting her slightly from the table as her body began to elongate. The process was gradual yet steadier now, bones lengthening, muscles developing, features maturing. The crack in her mask began to stabilize, neither healing completely nor widening further. Yoruichi worked in perfect sync with Naruto, her hands moving in complex patterns that redirected excess energy safely away from Nell's transforming body. Harribel maintained a steady pressure around the mask fragment, ensuring the delicate balance between hollow and humanoid aspects remained intact. After several minutes of intense concentration, the golden light began to fade. Where the child had been now lay a fully grown woman with long teal hair spread across the examination table. Her features were striking, mature she retaining a hint of the innocence that had characterized her child form. The broken mask remained, but now seemed an intentional part of her appearance rather than a wound. Nalil's eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on the 3 figures surrounding her. Recognition dawned gradually, followed by an expression of wonder as she lifted her adult hands before her face. I'm complete again, she whispered, her voice deeper but carrying the same cadence as her child form. How? Your true self was always there, Naruto explained, offering his hand to help her sit up. Your spiritual press. You just needed the right guidance to reconstruct proper pathways. Nalil took his hand, moving with the fluid grace of a warrior testing long unused muscles. As she rose to a seated position, her gaze intensified, studying Naruto with new awareness. "You're not just helping us adapt," she said with sudden insight. "You're helping us evolve. The hunger that defined us as hollows, you're transforming it into something else." Harribel nodded approvingly. "Your perception remains as sharp as ever, Nalil." The restored Arankar smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her serious features. She feels wonderful to think clearly again." Her eyes returned to Naruto, filled with something beyond mere gratitude. "Thank you for bringing me back to myself." Before Naruto could respond, Yoruichi's posture shifted subtly, the nearly imperceptible tension that signaled approaching danger. "We have company. Not the diplomatic kind." Naruto extended his senses beyond Las Noches, immediately detecting what had alerted Yoruichi. 6 spiritual signatures approaching rapidly from the direction of a small garganta opening, too small for an official delegation, too precisely aimed for random intrusion. Assassins, Harribel concluded, already moving toward the exit. Likely sent by hardliners in Central 46 who don't wish to wait for diplomatic failure. Central 46 doesn't officially sanction assassinations, Yoruichi noted. Though her tone suggested this technicality meant little. Then they'll be on Mitsukido operating with plausible deniability, Harribel countered. "Your former subordinates, Flash Goddess." Naruto made a quick decision. "Sung-sun, please remain with Nalil until she's fully stabilized." Yoruichi. "Harribel, with me." Outside, Las Noches had already responded to the intrusion. Arturo Platido, the Arankar Naruto had transformed during his first week, had organized a defensive perimeter with remarkable efficiency. No longer driven by ambition and hunger, Arturo had revealed a tactical mind that rivaled veteran Shinigami commanders. 6 intruders approaching from the northeast, he reported crisply as Naruto emerged. "They're masking their Ryutsu, but not well enough. Appears to be a specialized hit squad. 5 support operatives surrounding one primary assassin." "I recognize the pattern," Yoruichi confirmed, her expression darkening. "It's a central spear format. Ion. Reserved for high-priority targets considered immediate threats to Soul Society's fundamental structure." Naruto considered his options. Confronting the assassins directly would provide clarity, but he might force an escalation that would undermine tomorrow's diplomatic meeting. Allowing his forces to engage might result in casualties on both sides, further straining relations. "We'll intercept them before they reach Las Noches proper," he decided. "Arturo, maintain defensive positions but do not pursue if they retreat. This is about sending a message, not starting a war." The Arankar bowed slightly. "Understood, Lord Naruto." Naruto still hadn't grown comfortable with such titles, but he'd learned that certain formalities helped maintain the social structure that kept Las Noches functioning smoothly. With a nod to Yoruichi and Harribel, he vanished in a flash of movement that combined Shinigami Shunpo with his own shinobi speed techniques. They intercepted the assassination team approach, approximately 2 miles from Las Noches' outer perimeter. As expected, they traveled in perfect formation, 5 black-clad operatives surrounding a central figure whose spiritual pressure, even suppressed, radiated lethal intent. Naruto appeared directly in their path, Yoruichi and Harribel flanking him slightly behind. The 6 assassins halted instantly, maintaining formation. "That's far enough," Naruto stated calmly. "Soul Society hasn't fallen so far that it sends killers before diplomats, has it?" The central figure, a woman with short silver hair and a face partially concealed by a black mask, spoke in a voice devoid of emotion. "Target confirmed. Soul Society has declared entity designate, Naruto Uzumaki, to be an Omega-level threat to cosmic stability. Terminate with extreme prejudice." Yoruichi stepped forward, golden eyes narrowed. "By whose authority?" The captain commander would never authorize an assassination on the eve of diplomatic talks. "Authorization Code Seal 366, the assassin replied mechanically. "Central 46 Special Directive. All witnesses are considered acceptable collateral damage." Harribel's spiritual pressure rose dangerously. "They sent you to die, then." "This conversation is irrelevant," the assassin stated, drawing a Zanpakuto with unusual modifications, a blade that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Containment team, establish negation field alpha." The 5 support operatives moved in perfect synchronization, each drawing a small crystalline device that pulsed with engineered Ryutsu. As they activated simultaneously, a pentagonal field of energy formed around the entire group, including Naruto and his companions. Negation field, Naruto questioned, recognizing neither the term nor the technology from the Soul King's memories. Experimental, Yoruichi explained tersely. Designed to prevent spiritual pressure from escaping a contained area, no reinforcements in or out. Central 46 must be desperate to field test this technology. The assassin didn't waste time on further dialogue. Her blade descended in a perfect arc aimed at Naruto's neck, a strike designed to sever the soul chain and soul sleep simultaneously, causing complete spiritual destruction. Naruto didn't move. The blade connected with his neck but stopped as if striking diamond. Golden energy rippled from the point of contact, traveling up the Zanpakuto toward its wielder. I don't want to hurt you, Naruto said quietly. You're following orders, I understand that. But I can't allow this attack to continue. The assassin showed no reaction to her failed strike, immediately shifting to a secondary attack pattern, a series of precision strikes targeting spiritual pressure points. Each blow connected but produced the same result, no damage to Naruto. Why? The golden energy continued spreading up her weapon. Modified subject shows immunity to conventional soul severance techniques, she reported to no one in particular, likely recording the encounter. Implementing Bakudo override protocols. Quote, she leapt backward as her 5 companions abandoned their positions maintaining the negation field, instead forming a pentagram around Naruto. Before they complete whatever technique they planned, Yoruichi vanished, reappearing milliseconds later behind 2 of the operatives. Her movements were too fast to track. One moment she stood ready, the next 2 operatives collapsed unconscious. Sorry, she said, not sounding particularly apologetic. But I know exactly what that formation does, and it's not something I can allow. Harribel moved simultaneously, her sealed Zanpakuto striking with precision rather than overwhelming force. 2 more operatives dropped, their specialized equipment clattering across the white sand. The remaining operative, ND the central assassin adjusted instantly, backs pressed together as they assessed the drastically altered situation. Primary containment failed, the assassin noted clinically. Implementing terminal protocol Omega, the assassin's Zanpakuto began to glow with ominous black energy, while her companion produced a sphere of condensed Ryutsu that pulsed with unstable power. They're going to self-destruct, Yoruichi realized. Alarm evident in her voice. That's a soul detonation sphere, it'll destroy everything within half a mile. Naruto didn't hesitate, moving faster than even Yoruichi could track. He appeared between the 2 Shinigami, hands pressed against each of their chests. Golden energy flowed from his palms, not as an attack but as a wave of purifying force that neutralized the building detonation. The assassin's eyes widened, the first real emotion she displayed. Impossible. The detonation sequence cannot be interrupted once initiated. I'm not interrupting it, Naruto explained gently. I'm transforming it. The black energy surrounding her Zanpakuto shifted gradually to violet, then blue, finally settling into a calm golden glow. The detonation sphere in her compani. On's hand underwent a similar transformation, eventually dissolving into harmless particles of light. What are you? The assassin whispered, genuine confusion breaking through her conditioned detachment. Naruto met her gaze directly. Someone who believes there's a better way than eternal conflict between realms. Tell Central 46 that tomorrow's diplomatic meeting is still welcome. If they want to understand what's happening in Hueco Mundo, they should ask, not attack. He stepped back, releasing both operatives. Rather than attempting to continue their mission, they remained motionless, clearly reassessing. You're letting us leave? The assassin asked, suspicious. Yes, Naruto confirmed. Take your unconscious companions and go. Report what you've seen accurately. That's all I ask. The assassin stared at him for several long seconds before nodding once. With remarkable efficiency, she and her conscious companion gathered their fallen comrades and retreated toward the small garganta that had brought them. As they disappeared, Harribel approached Naruto. That was merciful but potentially unwise. They will return with better information and more dangerous methods. Or they'll return with questions instead of weapons. Naruto countered. Did you notice? When I neutralized her Zanpakuto, something changed in her spiritual pressure, like a fog lifting. Yoruichi nodded thoughtfully. I felt it too. Central 46's special operations units undergo extensive conditioning. Your energy may have disrupted some of it. All the more reason they'll consider you dangerous, Harribel observed pragmatically. You don't just defeat enemies, you transform them. From their perspective, that's far more threatening than simple destruction. Naruto sighed, looking toward the endless night sky of Hueco Mundo. Tomorrow's meeting just got more complicated, didn't it? Considerably, Yoruichi confirmed with a wry smile. But potentially more interesting as well. Captains Hitsugaya and Kyoraku are not Central 46 puppets. They'll want to understand what they're seeing before making judgments. As they turned back toward Las Noches, Naruto noticed something unusual about the surrounding desert. Small crystalline formations emerging from the sand where droplets of his energy had fallen during the confrontation. Already, the normally barren landscape was responding to his presence, gradually transforming into something new. Like Hueco Mundo itself, he reflected. Evolution couldn't be stopped once it began. The diplomatic contingent from Soul Society arrived precisely at the designated hour. The Garganta opened approximately 1 mile from Las Noches' main entrance, close enough to show confidence but far enough to demonstrate appropriate caution. Naruto had arranged a proper reception. A pathway of crystalline tiles led from the Garganta's location to Las Noches, flanked by Rancor honor guards representing various factions that had pledged loyalty to the new regime. Harribel stood at his right, resplendent in a modified uniform that maintained her Espada heritage while incorporating elements of the new order. Nalil, fully recovered and dressed in similar attire, stood at his left. Yoruichi had declined to participate in the formal welcome, preferring to observe from a position that wouldn't immediately identify her as allied with Hueco Mundo. Some complications are better introduced gradually, she had explained with her characteristic smirk. First through the Garganta came a small advance team, Shinigami of the Onmitsukido, who moved with precision to secure the immediate area. Naruto recognized the standard protocol but noted the tension in their movements. Clearly, yesterday's failed assassination had put everyone on high alert. Next emerged Captain Toshi, Ro Hitsugaya, exactly as the Soul King's memories depicted him. Small in stature but carrying himself with the absolute confidence of extraordinary power, white hair contrasting sharply with the standard captain's howry. His turquoise eyes scanned the reception party with analytical intensity, missing nothing. Behind him followed Lieutenant Rangaku Matsumoto, whose strawberry blonde hair and Gennaro Us figure presented a striking contrast to her captain's austere appearance. Despite her relaxed posture, Naruto immediately sensed something unusual about her spiritual pressure, a subtle disturbance, like a song missing certain notes. Captain Shunsui Kyoraku entered last, his pink kimono worn over the standard captain's uniform making him instantly recognizable. Unlike Hitsugaya's obvious scrutiny, Kyoraku's assessment was veiled behind a seemingly casual demeanor and half-lidded eyes. Naruto wasn't fooled. This was perhaps the most dangerous Shinigami present, precisely because he appeared so unthreatening. Welcome to Las Noches. Naruto greeted them as they approached, using the formal language appropriate for diplomatic exchanges that he'd learned from the Soul King's memories. Soul S. Oshiti honors us with representatives of such distinction. Captain Hitsugaya's eyes narrowed slightly. Naruto Uzumaki, you match the description provided by our intelligence. Some of it gathered rather directly, I understand. Naruto replied with deliberate emphasis. Though perhaps not through officially sanctioned channels. Captain Kyoraku's expression shifted minutely, a flicker of calculation behind his genial facade. You'll have to forgive certain, enthusiastic elements within Soul Society. News of a powerful entity reorganizing Hueco Mundo has caused considerable concern. Consir. And I'm happy to address through proper dialogue, Naruto responded smoothly. Please, join us inside. We've prepared appropriate accommodations for your delegation. As they moved along the crystalline pathway, Lieutenant Matsumoto fell into step beside Naruto, slightly separated from her captain. Her gray eyes studied him with undisguised curiosity. You're not what I expected, she remarked, her voice carrying a melodic quality that belied its strength. Reports described something much more monstrous. Disappointed? Naruto asked with a slight smile. Intrigued, she corrected, returning the smile with one of her own. Though I must say, These accommodations are considerably more impressive than the Las Noches I remember from the war. You've been here before. During the battle against Aizen, she confirmed, a shadow briefly crossing her features. Not pleasant memories. Before Naruto could respond, he felt a subtle shift in her spiritual pressure, that strange disturbance intensifying momentarily as she walked closer to him. Her step faltered slightly, though she recovered quickly enough that most wouldn't have noticed. Are you all right, Lieutenant Matsumoto? He asked quietly. Her eyes widened fractionally before her practiced smile returned. Perfectly fine. Just adjusting to Hueco Mundo's atmosphere again. Naruto didn't press the issue, but filed away the observation. Something about his presence was affecting her specifically, a reaction different from anything he'd witnessed before. The diplomatic party entered Las Noches' main reception hall, a vast crystal chamber where the spiritual pressure had been carefully balanced to feel neutral rather than hollow dominant. Captain Hitsugaya immediately noted this detail. Interesting atmospheric engineering, he commented, his analytical mind clearly cataloging every detail. The spiritual composition here differs significantly from the rest of Hueco Mundo. One of many changes we've implemented, Harribel responded. Speaking for the first time since the delegation's arrival, Las Noches now serves as a nexus for balanced spiritual pressure rather than a concentration of dominating force. Captain K. Yoriku's attention shifted to the former Espada. Cheer Harribel. Reports of your alliance with Naruto Uzumaki were apparently accurate, as were reports of my imprisonment by those seeking to maintain Hueco Mundo's previous state of constant predation, she replied evenly. Perspectives shift when one experiences both systems directly. And you, Nalil Tu Odelschwenk, Hitsugaya addressed the green-haired Urankar. Our intelligence suggested you were permanently regressed to a childlike form. Nalil smiled, the expression transforming her serious features. I was. Naruto helped restore what was taken from me. Restoration seems to be a recurring theme, Kiraku observed casually, though his gaze had sharpened. Fascinating process, I imagine. Naruto recognized the subtle interrogation technique, the appearance of casual conversation masking targeted information gathering. Before he could redirect the conversation to formal diplomatic matters, a disturbance rippled through the spiritual atmosphere outside Las Noches. Captain, Lieutenant Matsumoto said sharply, her hand moving to her zanpakuto. I feel it, Hitsugaya confirmed, his relaxed posture instantly abandoned. Multiple Vasto Lord class spiritual pressures approaching rapidly. Naruto extended his senses beyond the fortress walls, immediately identifying the threat. The Vasto Rebellion, he informed the group. Their timing is suspiciously convenient. Implying, Hitsugaya asked tersely. Not that you arranged it, Naruto clarified. But they may have been monitoring Soul Society's movements, waiting for an opportunity when your presence might complicate our response. Or hoping to provoke conflict between us, Kiraku suggested, demonstrating the tactical insight that had made him legendary. Naruto nodded. Either way, they need to be dealt with. He turned to Harribel. Defensive positions, standard protocol. No unnecessary engagement. And your guests, she inquired with a pointed glance at the Shinigami delegation, are welcome to observe how we handle internal security, Naruto replied. Unless they prefer to remain here. Captain Kiraku adjusted his straw hat with a deceptively lazy gesture. I believe observation would be most illuminating. Don't you agree, Captain Hitsugaya? The younger captain nodded curtly. Provided we're not drawn into Hueco Mundo's internal conflicts. You won't be, Naruto assured him. Unless you choose to intervene. As they moved toward Las Noches' western observation platform, Lieutenant Matsumoto again found herself near Naruto. This time, the disturbance in her spiritual pressure was more pronounced, strong enough that she visibly winced. Lieutenant, Naruto addressed her quietly, something about my spiritual pressure is affecting you specifically. This isn't random. Her gray eyes widened in surprise before narrowing with suspicion. How could you possibly know that? Because I can feel the resonance, he explained. Like something. G in you is responding to something in me. The Soul King's essence, specifically. Matsumoto paled slightly. That's impossible. Yet it's happening, Naruto countered gently. After we deal with the current situation, we should discuss this privately. She studied him for a long moment before giving a barely perceptible nod. After they reached the observation platform as the attacking force came into view, a coordinated group of approximately 20 Vasto Lord-class hollows, leading hundreds of lesser hollows in a wave approaching from the west. Las Noches' defensive formations had already deployed, with Arturo Platito commanding the primary response team. Impressive organization, Captain Hitsugaya noted reluctantly. Arankar and hollows working in coordinated defensive patterns. Aizen never achieved this level of genuine cooperation. Aizen ruled through fear and manipulation, Nalil explained, her military experience evident in how she assessed the deployment. Naruto leads through a different approach. Quote, below, the first wave of attackers encountered Las Noches' defensive barrier, not the traditional energy shield that had protected Aizen's fortress, but a living wall of crystalline structures that responded intelligently to hostile intent. Lesser hollows found themselves redirected rather than destroyed, their attacks absorbed and neutralized. Fascinating, Kiraku murmured. The barrier discriminates between intent and entity. The goal isn't destruction, Naruto explained. Even those currently attacking could eventually become part of a balanced Hueco Mundo. Unnecessary casualties only perpetuate the cycle of violence. The Vasto Lord leading the attack grew frustrated with the barrier's effectiveness, combining their Ceros into a massive blast aimed at creating a breach point. The concentrated energy struck the barrier, which began to crack under the immense pressure. Your philosophy is admirable, Hitsugaya observed coolly, but perhaps impractical against determined opposition. Before Naruto could respond, Harribel stepped forward. Permission to demonstrate alternative measures. Naruto nodded once. Granted. Harribel drew her Zanpakuto in a single fluid motion. Destroy, Tiburon. Water materialized around her, forming a heart-shaped cocoon that completely enclosed her body. When it burst outward moments later, her transformation was complete, revealing the resurrected form that had made her one of Aizen's most formidable Espada. Her hollow mask fragment had extended to cover the top of her head like a helmet, while her shoulders and arms were covered in bone-like armor. Her Zanpakuto had transformed into a broad pata-like blade resembling a shark's tooth. Without waiting for further instruction, she launched herself from the observation platform. A trail of water following her descent. As she approached the point where the Vasto Lord had concentrated their attack, she swung her weapon in a precise arc. Cascada, she intoned calmly. A massive wave of water materialized, crashing into the attacking Vasto Lord with tremendous force. Unlike traditional attacks, however, the water didn't simply strike with destructive power. It surrounded each Vasto Lord in individual prison-like bubbles that suspended them in place. Most interesting, Kiraku commented. I don't recall Harribel's abilities having such specific control during the war. Evolution affects everyone in Hueco Mundo now, Nalil explained. Our powers grow more refined rather than simply more destructive. Below, Arturo's forces moved with coordinated efficiency to contain the remaining attackers. Rather than killing the lesser hollows, they implemented the containment protocols Naruto had developed. Specialized binding techniques had neutralized hostile intent without destroying the captured hollows. Enough observation, Naruto decided. I should address the leadership personally. Without waiting for a response from the Shinigami delegation, he stepped off the platform, descending to the battlefield with controlled grace. Captain Hitsugaya exchanged a glance with Kiraku before both followed, clearly unwilling to miss whatever would happen next. Naruto approached the suspended Vasto Lord, 7 in total, each imprisoned in Harribel's water technique. The largest, a massive hollow with a mask resembling a prehistoric predator, thrashed futilely against his confinement. Usurper, the Vasto Lord snarled. Betrayer of hollow nature. You corrupt our very essence with your abominations. Your name is Baragus, correct? Naruto addressed him directly, former adherent to Baragan Luzenbairn's philosophy of pure destruction. The Vasto Lord ceased struggling, surprised at being recognized. You know me, I mock. At a point to know all significant powers in Hueco Mundo, Naruto replied calmly. Especially those who oppose what we're building here. Building, Baragus spat. You're destroying what makes us hollow. The hunger, the evolution through consumption, these define us. Naruto stepped closer, placing his palm against the water prison. Is suffering truly what defines you? Is endless hunger really the core of your identity? Without waiting for a response, he allowed golden energy to flow from his hand into the water, which conducted it directly to the imprisoned Vasto Lord. Unlike previous transformations, Naruto didn't force change. He simply offered an alternative perspective, allowing Baragus to experience existence without the all-consuming hunger that had driven him for centuries. Vasto Lord's struggles ceased as the energy suffused his form. His mask, originally frozen in a perpetual snarl, shifted subtly, the expression becoming less agonized. When Naruto removed his hand, Baragus remained still, seemingly processing the experience. What did you do to me? He finally asked, his voice less harsh. Showed you a possibility, Naruto answered. The hunger doesn't have to control you. It can be managed, directed, even transformed into something more constructive. Impossible, Baragus murmured, though with less conviction. Our nature is fixed. Nothing's nature is truly fixed. Naruto countered. Evolution is the fundamental law of existence. Even the Soul King understood this. At the mention of the Soul King, Captain Hitsugaya stepped forward, turquoise eyes intense. You reference the Soul King with surprising familiarity for someone from outside our cosmology. Naruto met his gaze directly. Because I carry a significant portion of his essence. Reincarnated through means I'm still coming to understand. The statement hung in the air, its implications rippling through both Shinigami and Arrancar present. Lieutenant Matsumoto, who had joined them on the ground, visibly reacted, the disturbance in her spiritual pressure spiking dramatically. That's a significant claim, Captain Kiraku observed, his casual tone doing nothing to disguise the sharp attention in his eyes. One that Central 46 would find concerning. Truth often is concerning to those invested in maintaining a particular order, Naruto replied evenly. But it doesn't make it any less true. He turned back to Baragus and the other imprisoned Vasto Lord. You came here seeking to destroy what we're building. Instead, I offer you a choice. Experience the alternative we're creating. Or return to the desert. But know that attacks against Los Noches will continue to be met with containment rather than destruction, not out of weakness but principle. Harribel released her water prison technique, allowing the 7 Vasto Lord to drop to the sand. 6 immediately backed away, clearly reassessing their position. Baragus, however, remained in place, studying Naruto with new intensity. The hunger is quieter, he said finally. How long will this last? That depends on you, Naruto explained. What I showed you isn't permanent without your cooperation. It's a path, not a prison. After a long moment, Baragus inclined his massive head. I will consider your words. The rebellion will withdraw for now. As the attacking force began its retreat, carefully monitored by Arturo's security teams. Captain Hitsugaya approached Naruto directly. That display was illuminating, he stated, his formal tone barely concealing his curiosity. But raises more questions than it answers. If you truly carry the Soul King's essence, the implications for all realms are profound. Which is precisely why we requested this diplomatic meeting, Naruto responded. Hueco Mundo is changing, yes. But not into a threat, into a balanced participant in the cosmic order. Captain Kiraku adjusted his hat thoughtfully. A noble aspiration, though one that challenges centuries of established understanding. Central 46 sent us to assess the situation objectively, but I suspect they've already formed opinions based on incomplete information. Then provide them complete information, Naruto suggested. Observe everything. Ask your questions. I have nothing to hide from those genuinely seeking understanding. Lieutenant Matsumoto stepped forward, her usual carefree demeanor replaced by intense focus. You said the Soul King's essence is within you. Is that why? She trailed off, gesturing vaguely toward herself. Naruto nodded. Your spiritual pressure contains a disturbance, a void where something was removed. It resonates with the Soul King's essence because it's connected to the same source. Her gray eyes widened. How could you possibly know about that? Because the Soul King's memories recognize the pattern, Naruto explained gently. Someone extracted a portion of your spiritual energy connected to the Soul King's fragmentation. Captain Hitsugaya's expression sharpened. Lieutenant, what is he referring to? Matsumoto hesitated before answering. Captain, remember the investigation into my encounter with Aizen before his defection. The eunuchs, Planed gap in my spiritual pressure that not even Captain Unohana could identify. Of course, Hitsugaya confirmed, his gaze shifting between his lieutenant and Naruto. But how would that connect to the Soul King? Because Aizen was collecting fragments, Naruto explained. Not just creating a Rancor or experimenting with holification, he was gathering spiritual entities connected to the Soul King's original fragmentation. Captain Kyoraku's usually relaxed posture had vanished completely. That information is restricted to the highest levels of Soul Society. Not restricted from the Soul King himself, Naruto countered. His memories are incomplete but contain crucial insights about his own fragmentation. Lieutenant Matsumoto stepped closer to Naruto, determination overriding caution. If you know what was taken from me, is there any way to restore it? The question hung in the air, loaded with implications that extended far beyond personal concern. If Naruto could restore what Aizen had taken, it would demonstrate power over soul composition that even Soul Society's most advanced techniques couldn't match. Possibly, Naruto answered truthfully. But not without understanding exactly what was taken and why. That would require extensive examination of your spiritual structure, which would not be authorized during a preliminary diplomatic mission, Captain Hitsugaya interjected firmly. Of course, Naruto acknowledged. I merely answered the lieutenant's question honestly. Captain Kyoraku observed the exchange with calculating eyes. I believe we've gathered sufficient preliminary impressions for one day. Perhaps we should continue our discussions in a more formal setting. As they returned to Las Noches proper, Naruto noticed Matsumoto falling behind slightly, clearly lost in thought. He slowed his pace to match hers. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I believe whatever was taken from you is still intact somewhere. The Soul King's memories sug. Saint Aizen wouldn't have destroyed something so valuable. Her gray eyes met his, vulnerability briefly visible beneath her composed exterior. How can you be so certain? Because it resonates, Naruto explained simply. Like recognizes like. The fragment of the Soul King within me recognizes the void within you is connected to the same whole. For a moment, Matsumoto studied him with an intensity that belied her carefree reputation. You're nothing like what Central 46 described. What did they describe? Naruto asked, curious. A monster, she replied honestly. A corrupting force using the Soul King's stolen power to bend hollows to your will. Naruto couldn't help but laugh softly. Stolen power. I didn't exactly volunteer for this. One moment I was saving my world from destruction, next I woke up in endless white sand with memories and abilities I never asked for. Something in his candid response seemed to resonate with Matsumoto. Her expression softened slightly. That sounds complicated. It has been, he agreed, but also meaningful. Whatever brought me here, whatever purpose the Soul King had in choosing me as his vessel, I intend to use this power constructively. Before Matsumoto could respond, Captain Hitsugaya called for her to rejoin the main group. With a last thoughtful glance at Naruto, she complied, though the brief exchange had clearly left an impression. The diplomatic discussions continued for 3 days, gradually revealing the depth of the divide between Soul Society's traditional perspective and the new reality emerging in Hueco Mundo. Captain Hitsugaya maintained professional skepticism throughout, while Captain Kyoraku displayed the deceptively casual interest that disguised his thorough assessment. On the evening of the 3rd day, as formal talks concluded, Yoruichi finally revealed her presence to the Shinigami delegation, a calculated move that prompted exactly the reaction Naruto had anticipated. Yoruichi Shihoin, Captain Kyoraku greeted her, surprise barely visible beneath his composed exterior. Your presence here adds another layer of complexity to an already intricate situation. I've been observing Naruto's work in Hueco Mundo for months. She confirmed unapologetically. What he's accomplishing here deserves objective evaluation, not predetermined judgment. And you consider yourself objective? Captain Hitsugaya questioned, skepticism evident. Yoruichi's golden eyes gleamed with amusement. More objective than Central 46, certainly. My exile gave me perspective Soul Society often lacks. The revelation of Yoruichi's involvement shifted the diplomatic dynamic considerably. Her reputation, despite her exile, still carried significant weight within Soul Society. Her endorsement of Naruto's efforts couldn't be easily dismissed, even by those predisposed to view Hueco Mundo with suspicion. As the Shinigami delegation prepared to return to Soul Society with their preliminary assessment, Lieutenant Matsum Odo sought out Naruto for a private conversation. They met in one of Las Noches' crystalline gardens, where spiritual energy flowed in visible patterns through specialized formations. "We're leaving tomorrow," she stated without preamble. "Captain Kyoraku intends to recommend continued observation rather than intervention, but Central 46 may overrule him." "And what would you recommend?" Naruto asked. Matsumoto considered her response carefully. "Professionally, cautious engagement. Personally," she met his gaze directly, "I'd recommend they listen to what you're actually saying instead of what they fear you might do." "That's surprisingly supportive, considering your position." She smiled slightly. "I've seen enough of Hueco Mundo, both Aizen's version and yours, to recognize the difference. Whatever you are, whatever power you carry, you're using it to heal rather than dominate. And that matters to you," Naruto observed. It wasn't a question. "Yes," she confirmed simply. "After what Aizen did, after what was taken from me, seeing power used constructively matters very much." Naruto hesitated before offering what he knew might be perceived as presumptuous. "I meant what I said about potentially helping you. Not immediately, perhaps not even soon, but if you're willing to trust me enough to try." Matsumoto studied him with unexpected intensity. "Why would you help me? What could you possibly gain?" "Understanding," Naruto answered honestly. "Whatever was taken from you connects to the Soul King's fragmentation. Helping you might help me understand my own situation better. So it's self-interest," she concluded, though without accusation. "Mutual interest," Naruto corrected. "But beyond that, because it's right. Because healing what was broken is always preferable to leaving wounds to fester." Something in his response resonated with her. "You remind me of someone I knew long ago. He also believed in healing broken things." Her expression clouded briefly, before he became something else entirely. Before Naruto could inquire further, their conversation was interrupted by a distant alarm, not the urgent signal of an attack, but the steady pulse indicating an important discovery in Las Noches' research division. "Duty calls," Matsumoto asked with a small smile. "Always," Naruto confirmed. "Will I see you tomorrow before your departure?" "Count on it," she assured him. "Whatever happens next, I suspect our paths are now connected in ways neither of us fully understands yet." As Matsumoto departed, Naruto felt a presence materialize nearby. Sung-sun, the most intellectually inclined of Harribel's Fracken, observing from a respectful distance. "Lady Harribel sent me to inform you that the research division has completed their analysis of the Forest of Mano's samples," she explained, her voice maintaining its customary measured tone despite evident excitement. "The results are significant." "How significant?" Naruto inquired, already moving toward the research facilities. "Revolutionary," Sung-sun replied, falling into step beside him. "The crystallization process has reached the forest's deepest levels. The Jillians are evolving without consuming each other." The implications were indeed profound. The Forest of Manos had traditionally been the most chaotic region of Hueco Mundo, where countless Manos Grande, the amalgamated forms of hollows who had consumed each other, wandered in mindless hunger. If evolution was occurring naturally there, without predation, it suggested the changes Naruto had initiated were spreading far beyond Las Noches. "Show me," he requested, his pace quickening. The research division occupied what had once been Shielaporo laboratories, though thoroughly cleansed of the former Espada's more disturbing experiments. Under Nalil's supervision, it had been transformed into a center for understanding hollow evolution rather than exploiting it. Nalil herself met them at the entrance, her expression betraying unusual excitement. "Naruto, the forest samples, they're showing cellular restructuring unlike anything we've documented before." She led them to a central chamber where crystalline microscopy devices displayed magnified images of spiritual matter collected from the Forest of Manos. The traditional black spiritual particles that comprised Manos Grande were visibly transforming, not dissolving or deteriorating, but reorganizing into more complex patterns. "It's remarkable," Nalil continued, gesturing to the displays. "The hunger signature, the spiritual marker that drives hollows to consume others, is being replaced by a harmonization pattern. They're drawing ambient spiritual energy from their surroundings rather than from other entities." Like plants using photosynthesis instead of consuming other organisms. Sung Sun observed, demonstrating the intellect that set her apart from most Arankar. Exactly, Nalil confirmed. But this introduces a new imperative. We need to establish a presence in the forest of Manos immediately. If this evolution continues unchecked, it could destabilize the entire region. Or accelerate the transformation beyond our ability to monitor it, Naruto added. Understanding the implications. How soon can we organize an expedition? Within hours, Nalil replied confidently. I've already selected a team with the necessary expertise. I'll accompany you, Naruto decided. This development is too significant to delegate completely. Lady Harribel anticipated you might say that, Sung Sun noted with the barest hint of amusement. She asked me to inform you that she will be joining the expedition as well. The subtle shift in Sung Sun's tone didn't escape Naruto's notice. Over the past months, he'd become increasingly aware of the complex dynamics developing between himself, Harribel, Yoruichi, and now potentially others. While focused primarily on Hueco Mundo's transformation, he wasn't oblivious to the personal connections forming alongside the political ones. Please inform Lady Harribel that her presence will be most welcome, Naruto responded formally, though his slight smile acknowledged the subtext. As Sung Sun departed to deliver the message, Nalil moved closer to Naruto, her expression turning more serious. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. The Shinigami woman, Lieutenant Matsumoto, her spiritual disturbance is intensifying the longer she stays in Las Noches. Our sensors detected significant fluctuations during her conversation with you just now. I noticed, Naruto confirmed. Whatever Aizen took from her, it's somehow resonating with the Soul King's essence I carry. Nalil studied him thoughtfully. You've become invested in her situation. It could provide answers about my own condition, Naruto explained, though recognizing this wasn't the entire truth. And yes, I find her situation compelling. No one should have pieces of themselves forcibly removed. You've helped many here recover what was lost, Nalil acknowledged, unconsciously touching her mask fragment, the physical reminder of her own restoration. Including me, it's natural you'd want to extend that help to others. Her hand briefly touched his arm, a gesture of understanding that carried unexpected warmth. Since her restoration to adult form, Nalil had displayed increasing comfort with physical proximity, particularly around Naruto. The expedition leaves at dawn, she informed him, professional focus returning. The Shinigami delegation departs at the same time. Interesting timing. Very, Naruto agreed. Perhaps you could ensure our farewells to our guests are properly coordinated with our departure preparations. Nalil's smile held surprising mischief for one typically so serious. Of course, I'll make the necessary arrangements. As she departed, Naruto turned his attention back to the displays showing the transformation occurring in the forest of Manos. Something fundamental was changing in Hueco Mundo, not just its social structures or political organization, but its very spiritual composition. The Soul King's voice echoed in his memory, balance is not stasis. True balance is dynamic, constantly adjusting, allowing for growth and change while preventing collapse into chaos. Tomorrow's expedition would take him deep into Hueco Mundo's primordial heart, where the most basic hollow instincts had ruled unchallenged for millennia. Whatever they discovered there would shape the next phase of this world's evolution, and perhaps his own. Dawn in Hueco Mundo brought no cetual change in lighting. The eternal crescent moon remained fixed in the night sky, casting the same silver illumination it always had. Yet Las Noches operated on a structured schedule, and the design aided hour found two separate groups assembled at different exits from the fortress. Near the main entrance, the Shinigami delegation prepared for departure. Captain Hitsugaya maintained his professional demeanor as he exchanged formal farewells with Arturo Platido, who represented Las Noches' administrative authority in Naruto's absence. Captain Kyoraku's more relaxed approach included friendly conversation with several Arankar who had assisted during their stay. Lieutenant Matsumoto stood slightly apart from the main group, her gaze repeatedly drifting toward the western gate where the forest of Manos expedition was assembling. There, Naruto worked alongside Harribel, Nalil, and Sung Sun, reviewing final preparations for their journey. As if sensing her attention, Naruto looked up. Me. Matsumoto's gaze across the distance. After a moment's hesitation, he approached the Shinigami delegation, offering formal farewells to both captains before turning to Matsumoto. "Lieutenant," he greeted her. "I understand you're returning to Soul Society with many questions still unanswered." "Some questions can't be answered in 3 days of diplomatic talks," she replied with a hint of her usual playfulness, though her eyes remained serious. "True," Naruto acknowledged, "but perhaps we could continue our conversation about personal matters when circumstances allow." Captain Hits. Yugaya's sharp hearing caught the exchange. "Lieutenant, remember that all contact with representatives of Hueco Mundo must be authorized through proper channels." "Of course, Captain," she responded dutifully, though her expression suggested she might interpret proper channels creatively if necessary. "Your expedition to the forest of Manos sounds fascinating," Captain Kiraku commented, his deceptively casual tone not quite hiding his strategic interest. "Unusual timing, departing just as we leave." "Coincidental, I assure you," Naruto replied, meeting the captain's knowing gaze directly. Quote, "Though if you'd like to extend your stay to observe, you'd be welcome." Kiraku chuckled. "Tempting, but Central 46 awaits our report with considerable impatience. Some other time, perhaps." As formal farewells concluded, Yoruichi appeared beside Naruto, having maintained a deliberate distance from the official proceedings. "They'll report objectively," she assessed quietly, watching the Shinigami delegation prepare their garganta. "But Central 46 will hear what they want to hear." "And what about Lieutenant Matsumoto?" Naruto inquired. "Her situation complicates matters." Yoruichi's golden eyes gleamed with understanding. "She's a wild card, personally affected by what you've revealed, professionally bound to Soul Society, and very capable of making her own decisions despite appearances." As the Shinigami delegation entered their garganta, Matsumoto glanced back one last time. Her expression conveyed something beyond diplomatic courtesy, a personal connection established that transcended the formal interactions of the past days. The garganta closed, leaving Naruto and Yoruichi standing alone near Las Noches' main entrance. "Will you join our expedition?" Naruto asked, knowing Yorui. Kai had been deliberately vague about her plans. She smiled enigmatically. "I think I'll conduct some independent reconnaissance. Soul Society will be buzzing with activity following that delegation's report. Information from multiple sources will be valuable." Naruto understood the unspoken offer. "Keep me informed." "Of course," she agreed, her casual tone belied by the intensity in her golden eyes. "Be careful in the forest of Manos. Evolution can be unpredictable, sometimes dangerous." "I've noticed," Naruto replied with a meaningful smile. Yoruichi's laugh was genuine as she leaned forward unexpectedly, pressing a brief kiss to his cheek. "Indeed you have. Until next time, Soul King." Before he could respond, she vanished in a flash of movement that even his enhanced perception barely registered. When Naruto returned to the expedition group, Harribel's cool assessment awaited him. "The Shinigami have departed." "Yes," he confirmed, "with more questions than answers, I suspect." "And the Flash Goddess?" she inquired, her tone revealing nothing. "Conducting her own investigation in Soul Society," Naruto explained. "Her connections there remain valuable." Harribel nodded once, accepting the information without comment, though something in her gaze suggested she had noted the nature of Yoruichi's farewell. Nalil approached, practical as always. "The team is ready. We should depart while the desert is calm." The expedition moved out from Las Noches in tight formation, 20 individuals in total, including Naruto, Harribel, Nalil, and Sung-sun at its core. They traveled swiftly across the white sands, using a combination of sonido and other high-speed movement techniques to cover ground efficiently. As they journeyed, Sung-sun moved to travel alongside Naruto, her usual reserved demeanor giving way to cautious curiosity. "May I ask a personal question?" she inquired, her voice partially muffled by the sleeve she habitually held before her mouth. "Of course," Naruto encouraged, having always appreciated her analytical mind. "Your interactions with the Shinigami lieutenant," she began carefully. "They seem to extend beyond diplomatic necessity. Is her situation truly connected to your own?" Naruto considered the question thoughtfully. "Yes, though I don't fully understand how yet." The Soul King's fragmentation affected many individuals across all realms. Lieutenant Matsumoto appears to be one of them. And the Flash Goddess, Lady Harribel, Nalil, Sung Sun pressed, her serpentine eyes studying him closely. Are they similarly connected? The question's actual meaning wasn't lost on Naruto. Over months of interaction, he'd come to understand Sung Sun's indirect approach to important matters, especially personal ones. Different connections, he answered honestly. Yoruichi chose to stay and observe when she could have returned to report to her allies. Harribel remained when she could have claimed territory elsewhere in Hueco Mundo. Nalil embrace her restored form and abilities when she could have retreated from responsibility. And what of those who serve them? Sung Sun asked, the question even more carefully phrased. Those who observe and analyze rather than lead directly. Naruto smiled, understanding her true inquiry. They matter just as much. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from those who watch and think rather than simply act. Something shifted in Sung Sun's typically guarded expression, a brief flash of genuine pleasure at being understood. A diplomatic answer, an honest one, Naruto countered gently. Before their conversation could continue, Harribel signaled for the expedition to halt. They had reached the outer perimeter of the Forest of Manos, a region where the endless white sand gave way to crystalline formations resembling petrified trees. Beyond these formations, massive stone structures marked the entrance to the underground forest proper. Something's different, Nalil observed, studying the entrance with narrowed eyes. The spiritual pressure is structured. Naruto extended his senses, immediately understanding her concern. Traditionally, the Forest of Manos emanated chaotic, hunger-driven spiritual pressure, the combined effect of countless Jillians wandering its depths. Now, however, the spiritual emanations followed distinct patterns, almost like deliberate communications. It's organizing itself, he realized. Not just evolving, but developing a collective structure. Harribel drew her Zanpakuto, though she didn't immediately release it. We should proceed with caution. Organized Jillians would present a different challenge than mindless ones. The expedition descended into the underground forest, moving through massive stone pillars that supported the cavern ceiling. As they progressed deeper, the transformation became increasingly evident. Crystal formations had spread throughout the forest, growing along the stone pillars and across the sandy floor. Where they touched, the typically gray-black coloration of the forest had shifted toward luminescent white. Most strikingly, the Jillians themselves had changed. Their traditional form, massive black-robed figures, with elongated white masks, remained recognizable, but crystal formations now grew across their masks and bodies. Instead of wandering aimlessly, they moved in coordinated patterns, gathering around particularly large crystal formations. They're communicating, Sung Sun observed with fascination. Look at their movements, it's a primitive form of social organization. But what are they organizing around? Nalil questioned, gesturing toward a central gathering where dozens of transformed Jillians had assembled. Naruto felt it before he saw it, a resonance with his own spiritual pressure, pulling him toward the gathering. There's something at the center. Something connected to the Soul King. Without waiting for the others, he moved forward, drawn by the resonance. The Jillians parted as he approached, their masked faces turning to track his movement. Despite their imposing size, they showed no hostility, only what appeared to be recognition. At the center of the gathering stood a crystal formation larger than the others, a structure resembling a throne, though no one sat upon it. As Naruto approached, golden energy began flowing between the crystal and himself, creating a visible connection. What is it? Harribel asked, having followed closely behind him. A fragment, Naruto answered, understanding dawning. A physical piece of the Soul King, embedded in Hueco Mundo's spiritual structure. It's been here for centuries, maybe longer. The fragment pulsed with increasing intensity as Naruto drew closer, responding to his presence. Images flashed through his mind, the Soul King's original division of the worlds. The establishment of Hueco Mundo as a counterbalance to Soul Society, the gradual fragmentation of the King's consciousness across dimensions. It's a memory anchor, he explained to the others who had gathered around. A record of the Soul King's original purpose for Hueco Mundo. Not just as a prison for hollows, but as an essential component of cosmic balance. And the Jillians? Nalil questioned, gesturing to the transformed Manos. Why are they gathering around it? Because they're evolving beyond hunger, Naruto realized. As their primary drive diminishes, they're seeking purpose. The fragment provides that, a connection to their original place in the cosmic order. Sung Sun moved closer to one of the transformed Jillians, studying it with analytical precision. Their masks are changing. The expressions are becoming more distinct, individualized. She was right. Where Jillian masks had traditionally been identical, expressionless white faces with long, pointed noses, these showed subtle variations. Different eye shapes, altered proportions, unique markings. They were developing individual identities within their collective evolution. This changes everything, Harribel stated, her pragmatic assessment cutting to the heart of the matter. If Jillians can evolve collectively rather than through cannibalism, the entire spiritual ecosystem of Hueco Mundo transforms. And with it, the balance between worlds, Naruto added, understanding the full implications. Soul Society's purpose has always been to purify hollows individually, ending them to Soul Society or condemning them to hell based on their actions. But if hollows can evolve naturally without predation, then Soul Society's role requires re-evaluation, Nalil completed the thought. The Shinigami become partners in evolution rather than simply exterminators of threats. The crystal fragment pulsed again, responding to their realization. Naruto felt compelled to touch it directly, to establish a more complete connection with this piece of the Soul King's legacy. As his hand made contact, golden energy surged between them. The fragment didn't simply communicate with him, it began to integrate, dissolving into particles of light that flowed into Naruto's body. With each passing moment, more of the Soul King's memories and power transferred to him, filling gaps in his understanding. The gathered expedition members watched in awe as the process continued, the massive crystal structure gradually diminishing as its essence merged with Naruto. The transformed Jillians remained in their circular formation, masked faces turned toward the spectacle with what appeared to be reverence. When the integration completed, Naruto stood transformed, not physically, but spiritually. His Ryutsu had evolved, becoming more structured, more complete. The golden patterns in his eyes glowed with new intensity, and the subtle luminescence of his skin had brightened. Naruto. Nalil approached cautiously. Are you all right? He turned to her, vision enhanced by his evolved spiritual awareness. Where before he had seen her as an Arankar with a complex spiritual structure, now he perceived the complete harmony of her being, the perfectly balanced integration of hollow and human aspects that made her unique. I'm more than all right, he answered, his voice carrying new resonance. I understand now. The Soul King didn't just create separation between worlds, he established pathways for evolution. Hueco Mundo was never meant to remain a realm of eternal hunger. He looked around at the transformed forest, at the crystalline growths spreading from where the fragment had stood, at the Jillians whose evolution continued even as they watched. This is just the beginning, he continued. The forest of Manos isn't just changing, it's becoming what it was always meant to be. A cradle for hollow evolution beyond predation. Harribel studied him with new intensity. And what does that make you? Still Naruto Uzumaki, or more the Soul King reborn? The question cut to the heart of his own evolution, the gradual integration of two distinct existences into something new. Rather than answering immediately, Naruto extended his hand toward her, offering something more meaningful than words. See for yourself, he invited. After a moment's hesitation, Harribel placed her hand in his. Golden energy flowed between them, not transformative as with the hollows he had changed, but communicative. Through this connection, he shared his perspective, allowing her to experience his dual consciousness directly. Her teal eyes widened slightly, the equivalent of profound shock for someone typically so composed. When their connection ended, she regarded him with new understanding. Both, she concluded, separate yet integrated, like Arankar themselves. Exactly, Naruto confirmed, pleased by her insight. Two natures finding harmony rather than conflict. Sung Sun had moved closer during this exchange, her analytical mind clearly processing the implications. If the forest of Manos continues this evolution, the spiritual pressure throughout Hueco Mundo will shift dramatically. Soul Society will certainly notice. They already have, came a new voice, familiar, feminine, unexpected. The expedition turned as one to see Rangaku Matsumoto step from between two crystal-covered pillars. She wore not her Shinigami uniform but simplified clothing that wouldn't immediately identify her allegiance. Her spiritual pressure remained partially suppressed, explaining how she had approached undetected. Lieutenant Matsumoto, Nalil acknowledged, surprise evident. You were meant to return to Soul Society with your delegation. I was, Matsumoto confirmed, her gaze fixed on Naruto. But some questions couldn't wait for diplomatic channels to process them. She approached deliberately, stopping a few paces from Naruto. With his enhanced perception, he could see the void in her spiritual structure more clearly now, a precisely extracted portion that had left her functional but incomplete. You felt it, didn't you? She asked quietly. When that fragment joined with you, something connected to what's missing in me. Naruto nodded. Yes, whatever Aizen took from you, it was related to the Soul King's fragmentation. A piece deliberately separated and preserved. Why would Aizen target me specifically? She questioned, frustration evident beneath her composed exterior. Not you specifically, Naruto clarified, understanding flowing from his newly integrated knowledge. Your connection to someone else. Someone Aizen needed to manipulate. Matsumoto's eyes widened. Jin, she whispered. This was about controlling Jin Ichimaru. The name triggered recognition. I am the Soul King's memories. A silver-haired Shinigami with closed eyes and a fox-like smile, whose true motivations remained hidden until the final confrontation with Aizen. Your childhood friend, Naruto confirmed. Who infiltrated Aizen's organization to destroy him from within? Aizen must have extracted a portion of your spiritual energy as insurance, leveraged to ensure Jin's cooperation if his true intentions were discovered. Tears gathered in Matsumoto's eyes, though she refused to let them fall. Even now, even after his death, I'm still discovering the lengths he went to, the price he paid. Without conscious thought, Naruto reached out, his hand gently touching her shoulder. Golden energy flowed between them, not invasive or transformative, but comforting, stabilizing the fluctuations in her spiritual pressure that had intensified with her emotional response. What Aizen took can be restored, Naruto told her with quiet confidence. Not immediately, and not without risk, but it's possible. How can you be sure? She asked, vulnerability breaking through her usual carefree facade. Because it still exists, he explained. The Soul King's fragments recognize each other across dimensions. What was taken from you is intact, preserved somewhere for Aizen's purposes. We can find it. Hope flickered in her gray eyes, quickly tempered by caution. Soul Society won't authorize me to pursue this. Especially not with. She gestured vaguely toward him, whatever you're becoming. Then don't ask for authorization, came Sung Sun's unexpected contribution. The typically reserved Irankar stepped forward, serpentine eyes assessing Matsumoto thoughtfully. If restoration is truly possible, bureaucratic approval seems an unnecessary complication. Matsumoto regarded Irankar with surprise that quickly shifted to appreciation for the pragmatic suggestion. You sound like someone who understands navigating restrictive systems. Lady Harribel values results above protocol, Sung Sun replied simply. Though the slight curve of her lips suggested mutual understanding. This discovery changes our immediate priorities, Harribel interjected, ever the practical strategist. The Forest of Mano's transformation must be monitored, but this connection to Aizen's manipulations could provide critical information about the Soul King's fragmentation. Nalil nodded in agreement. We should establish a permanent observation post here while pursuing this new development. I can oversee the forest monitoring personally. Naruto considered their suggestions, appreciating how quickly his closest advisors had adapted to this new information. Agreed. Nalil, select a team to remain with you here. Harribel, please return to Las Noches and inform Arturo of these developments. We'll need to prepare for potential responses from both Soul Society and any remaining Aizen loyalists when news of the forest's transformation spreads. And Lieutenant Matsumoto? Sung Sun inquired, glancing toward the Shinigami. Will remain with me, Naruto decided, meeting Matsumoto's gaze. If she chooses to, we need to better understand the connection between her situation and the Soul King's fragmentation. Matsumoto's expression reflected the complex calculation taking place behind her casual demeanor, weighing loyalty to Soul Society against the possibility of recovering what she had lost. considering the professional consequences against the personal gain. My captain will be furious, she said finally, a small smile forming despite the seriousness of her decision. But he'd be more furious if I passed up the opportunity to resolve this mystery once and for all. As the expedition reorganized according to their new priorities, Sung-sun approached Naruto once more, speaking quietly enough that only he could hear. Your connections continue to expand in interesting directions, she observed, her tone neutral yet somehow conveying meaning beyond the simple statement. Naruto regarded her thoughtfully. Throughout their months of interaction, Sung-sun had maintained professional distance while gradually revealing an intellect and perception that often surpassed her more demonstrative companions. Her subtle approach had allowed her to observe the evolving relationships around Naruto with analytical precision. Connections follow purpose more often than plan, he replied, matching her indirect approach. Those drawn to similar goals often find their paths aligning. And those who prefer to observe those alignments? She inquired, her question deliberately ambiguous. Often see patterns others miss. Naruto answered, allowing genuine appreciation to show in his expression. Sometimes the most valuable perspective comes from thoughtful observation rather than direct participation. Something shifted in Sung-sun's typically guarded expression, a brief glimpse of genuine reaction before her composed mask returned. A diplomatic assessment, an honest one, Naruto countered, echoing their earlier exchange with deliberate emphasis. As the expedition prepared to separate into their assigned groups, Naruto found himself at the center of evolving relationships that transcended simple political alliances or strategic partnerships. Harribel with her unwavering loyalty and emerging warmth. Yoruichi with her playful independence and strategic brilliance. Nell with her restored confidence and growing personal connection. Matsumoto with her newfound hope and complex motivations. And even Sung-sun, whose analytical distance had gradually evolved into something more nuanced. The forest of Manos stretched around them, its transformation reflecting Hueco Mundo's broader evolution. Like the realm itself, the connections forming between these powerful individuals were developing beyond their original purposes, creating something new and unprecedented. As Naruto stood amidst this physical and metaphysical transformation, he felt the integrated knowledge of the Soul King confirming what he already believed. True balance wasn't found in rigid separation or forced uniformity, but in the dynamic harmony of diverse elements evolving together toward a greater whole. Chapter 3. Sovereign Resonance. The dimensional tremors began 3 weeks after the Forest of Manos discovery. They manifested first as subtle disruptions in the spiritual fabric connecting Hueco Mundo to adjacent realms, minor fractures that most inhabitants barely noticed. But within Los Noches' crystalline research chamber, monitoring instruments captured the disturbance with alarming clarity. The frequency is accelerating, Sung-sun observed, serpentine eyes studying the pulsing crystal displays. Each tremor arrives approximately 17% faster than the previous one. Naruto stood before the central monitoring array, where three-dimensional projections displayed the weakening boundaries between worlds. Golden light flickered periodically in his eyes as he integrated this information with the Soul King's memories. It's the Soul Schism, he concluded grimly. The fragment I absorbed in the Forest of Manos accelerated the process. As the pieces of the Soul King reunite, the original separation between realms destabilizes. Rangaku Matsumoto approached the display, her pragmatic nature asserting itself despite the metaphysical complexity of their situation. During the weeks since her unofficial defection from the diplomatic mission, she had integrated herself into Los Noches' inner circle with remarkable adaptability. If the boundaries are weakening, she reasoned, wouldn't Soul Society's instruments detect it as well? Why haven't they responded? They are responding, came Harribel's measured assessment as she entered the chamber. Our scouts report increased Shinigami activity at all known stable Garganta points. They're attempting to reinforce the boundaries from their side. Without understanding the true cause, Naruto added. They're reading symptoms rather than addressing the underlying condition. Rangaku's expression reflected the internal conflict she'd been navigating since choosing to remain in Hueco Mundo, loyalty to her former comrades warring with her commitment to understanding the truth. Could we communicate our findings directly? Captain Yukitake or Captain Kyoraku might listen, even if Central 46 refuses. Perhaps, Harribel acknowledged, though her tone suggested skepticism. But the timing is problematic. Your absence has been officially classified as unauthorized intelligence gathering, a convenient fictio. And allowing Soul Society to avoid declaring you a defector while still justifying your retrieval. Rangaku's lips curved into a humorless smile. How diplomatic of them. Politics, Sung Sun commented dryly. Transcends dimensional boundaries, it seems. Another tremor shuddered through Las Noches, stronger than the previous ones. The crystalline structures throughout the fortress resonated in response, emitting harmonic tones that echoed eerily through the corridors. Naruto closed his eyes, extending his senses beyond physical perception. Through the Soul King's gradually integrating consciousness, he could perceive the damage occurring at a cosmic level, the delicate lattice of separation between worlds unraveling strand by strand. We're running out of time, he stated, opening eyes that now glowed with permanent golden light. The reunification process has reached a critical threshold. Unless we implement a new form of separation, one that allows connection without collapse, all realms will eventually converge. Convergence sounds rather apocalyptic, Rangaku observed, masking concern with characteristic lightness. It would be, Naruto confirmed. Imagine the human world, Soul Society, and Hueco Mundo occupying the same dimensional space simultaneously. Physical laws, spiritual principles, the very fabric of existence in each realm, all would conflict catastrophically. What's our alternative? Harribel asked, ever focused on practical solutions. Naruto turned to the central crystal, where the Soul King's fragmented memories had been gradually organizing themselves into coherent information. There's a ritual, ancient, predating even Soul Society's formation. It would allow for a recalibration of the dimensional boundaries without complete separation. Creating able borders rather than absolute barriers, Sung Sun deduced, quick mind grasping the concept immediately. Exactly, Naruto confirmed, but it requires components from all three major realms, brought together at a nexus point. Components? Rangaku questioned. Like ingredients for a spell. More like representatives, Naruto clarified. Individuals embodying the essence of each realm, working in perfect harmony to establish the new pattern. Harribel's teal eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Such harmony seems unlikely given the current political climate. And that, Naruto agreed, is our fundamental challenge. We need cooperation from Soul Society at precisely the moment they're most suspicious of our intentions. The chamber door opened once more, admitting Nalil, whose expression suggested urgent developments. Yoruichi has returned from her reconnaissance mission. She brings complicated news. Moments later, Yoruichi Shihoin swept into the research chamber, her usual fluid grace tempered by evident fatigue. Weeks of clandestine movement between realms had taken their toll, though her golden eyes remained sharp as ever. Soul Society is mobilizing, she announced without preamble. Not just boundary enforcement, they're assembling a full-scale intervention force. 3 captains, multiple lieutenants, plus specialized units from the Kido Corps and Onmitsukido. An invasion, Harribel translated flatly. Officially, a preemptive stabilization operation, Yoruichi corrected with a sardonic edge. The dimensional tremors pushed Central 46 over the edge from caution to action. They're convinced Hueco Mundo's transformation is causing the instability. They have it backwards, Naruto said. The transformation is a response to the soul schism, not its cause. Logic rarely overrides fear, Yoruichi noted. Stretching muscles tense from extended exertion. Particularly when the fear confirms existing prejudices about hollows and their realm. When will they move? Harribel asked, military mind already calculating defensive options. 3 days, Yoruichi answered. They're coordinating simultaneous breach points at 7 locations surrounding Las Noches. A.T. Actical projection materialized above the central crystal, displaying Las Noches and its surroundings with probable incursion vectors highlighted. A comprehensive encirclement, Sung Sun observed. D. Assigned to prevent escape rather than merely capture the fortress. They're not coming just for Las Noches, Naruto realized, fragments of the Soul King's awareness providing critical insight. They're targeting me specifically. Central 46 believes removing the Soul King's reincarnation will reverse the changes to Hueco Mundo. Would it? Rangaku asked quietly, the question hanging heavy in the suddenly silent chamber. Naruto met her gaze directly. No, the evolution has progressed too far. Destroying me would only accelerate the collapse by eliminating the one entity capable of establishing new boundaries. Another tremor shook the chamber, stronger than any previous. Throughout Las Noches, alarms activated automatically as monitoring systems registered critical threshold breaches. We don't have 3 days. Nalil concluded grimly. The dimensional decay is accelerating exponentially. Naruto made a swift decision. Yoruichi, Harribel, you need to return to Soul Society immediately. Find allies willing to listen. Bring them the data on the Soul Schism. Without representatives from all 3 realms participating willingly in the ritual, our chances of success are minimal. A suicide mission, Harribel observed without inflection, though her hand tightened almost imperceptibly on her Zanpakuto's hilt. Soul Society will arrest us on sight. Not if we approach the right people first, Yoruichi countered. Strategic mind already forming alternatives. Urahara has been monitoring the dimensional fluctuations independently. With his corroboration, we might convince Yukatakia, ND Kyoraku to act without Central 46's approval. A substantial risk nonetheless, Harribel noted, though without refusal. While they undertake that mission, Naruto continued, we need to prepare L. as noches for both Soul Society's intervention force and the ritual itself. This fortress needs to become the nexus point, the center of the new dimensional framework. Rangaku stepped forward, determination evident in her stance. I should accompany Yoruichi and Harribel. My captain trusts me, even after my unauthorized absence. He'd listen where he might dismiss others. Naruto studied her thoughtfully, sensing the complex interplay of loyalty, duty, and personal connection driving her offer. But the Soul King's knowledge provided crucial insight he couldn't ignore. Your role lies here, he told her gently. The void in your spiritual structure, what Aizen took from you, it's a critical component of the ritual. You represent a unique bridge between realms precisely because of that extraction. Surprise flickered across her features. My defect is actually valuable. Not a defect, Naruto corrected. A unique spiritual signature that crosses conventional boundaries. Aizen didn't show owes you randomly. He recognized something essential in your spiritual structure. Understanding dawned in her gray eyes. That's why my spiritual pressure has been resonating with yours since we met. We're both altered in ways that connect to this soul schism. Precisely, Naruto confirmed. Another tremor rocked Las Noches, this one lasting nearly 30 seconds. Crystal formations throughout T chamber vibrated at increasingly discordant frequencies. Time grows short, Nalil observed. If Yoruichi and Harribel are to reach Soul Society before the intervention force deploys, they must leave immediately. Naruto nodded agreement, turning to the 2 women who would undertake this critical mission. Take the most comprehensive data package on the Soul Schism. Focus on Urahara first. His scientific credibility will be essential to convincing others. Yoruichi's customary smirk returned despite the gravity of their situation. Convincing Kazuki will be the easy part. He's been theorizing about dimensional boundary mechanics for centuries. The hard part will be getting Soul Society's captains to act independently of Central 46. If anyone can manage it, you can, Naruto said with genuine confidence. His expression turned more serious as he addressed Harribel. Your presence in Soul Society will be particularly provocative. An Espada level Arankar entering their realm voluntarily will be interpreted as either a trap or an unprecedented diplomatic opportunity. Harribel completed his thought. I'm counting on the confusion to create operational space before they react definitively. Their eyes met, communicating more than words could efficiently express. Over months of collaboration, their initial pragmatic alliance had evolved into something more complex, respect deepening into trust. And trust gradually opening toward more personal connection. Return safely, Naruto said simply. We shall, Harribel replied, the uncharacteristic hint of emotion in her typically measured tone conveying volumes. As preparations for the dual-pronged response intensified, Sung-sun approached Naruto, her analytical mind having already processed several steps ahead. The ritual will require more than representatives from each realm, she observed quietly. The Soul King's memories must contain specific requirements, power thresholds, participant configurations, spiritual harmonics. Naruto nodded, impressed as always by her perceptive intelligence. You're right, we need to prepare the fortress itself. Reconfigure the crystal network to amplify and direct the ritual's effects. I can coordinate that effort, she offered, serpentine eyes meeting his directly, a relatively rare occurrence given her typically reserved demeanor. Please do, Naruto agreed. Select whatever resources and personnel you need. Your understanding of Las Noches' crystal architecture is unmatched. Something flickered in her expression, a moment of genuine reaction breaking through her composed exterior. You place considerable trust in someone who was once merely a frackin. I place trust where it's earned, Naruto corrected gently. Titles and former positions mean less than demonstrated capability. The subtle shift in Sung Sun's typically guarded demeanor spoke volumes about the impact of his words. With a graceful inclination of her head, she departed to begin the critical preparations. As the chamber cleared, each participant focused on their assigned responsibilities. Rengoku remained behind, studying Naruto with newfound intensity. You didn't tell them everything, she observed. Perception sharpened by years in intelligence gathering. About the ritual, about what it will cost you. Naruto smiled faintly, unsurprised by her insight. The Soul King's memories are still fragmentary, but clear enough on certain points. Establishing new dimensional boundaries requires an anchor, an entity existing simultaneously in all realms to maintain the connection. And that anchor would be you, Rengoku concluded, concern evident beneath her composed exterior. Permanently, in essence, Naruto confirmed. Though not necessarily in the static, isolated form the original Soul King was reduced to. Part of what went wrong with the first separation was the complete removal of the Soul King's autonomy, treated as an object rather than a participant in the balance he created. Rengoku moved closer, gray eyes searching his. Does anyone else understand what you're planning to become? Yoruichi suspects, Naruto admitted. Harribel senses it but hasn't pressed for confirmation. Nalil understands the transformation will be significant but not its exact nature. And Sung Sun, Naruto's expression softened, observes more than she reveals, as always. She's likely pieced together more than she acknowledges. Rengoku's lips curved into a knowing smile despite the gravity of their situation. You've formed quite the interesting circle of confidants. All formidable women, I notice. A coincidence of circumstance, Naruto replied, though his slight smile suggested he recognized the pattern she was highlighting. Is it? Rengoku questioned, her tone lighter but gaze still penetrating. Or do strong, complex women naturally gravitate toward someone who sees beyond conventional limitations? Someone who values them for capabilities others overlook or fear. Before Naruto could respond, another dimensional tremor shook Las Noches, the most powerful yet. Throughout the fortress, crystal structures resonated at frequencies approaching harmonic dissonance. In the distance, a massive fracture appeared in the eternal night sky of Hueco Mundo, a jagged line of absolute darkness cutting across the crescent moon. We're out of time for philosophical discussions, Naruto observed, moving toward the exit. The boundary decay is accelerating faster than anticipated. Rengoku fell into step beside him, professional focus returning instantly. What's our next move? Prepare for guests, Naruto answered grimly, expected and otherwise. The assault began 2 days earlier than Yoruichi had predicted. The first indication came not as the anticipated Garganta openings surrounding Las Noches, but as a massive Senkaimon materializing directly above the fortress, a formal gateway between Soul Society and other realms, its size indicating a substantial force. Naruto Street, Uda Top Crystal Spire, Las Noches' transformed central tower, with Nalil and Sung Sun flanking him as the enormous gate manifested. Behind them, Arankar and Evolved Hollows moved with disciplined precision to defensive positions throughout the fortress. A direct approach, Nalil observed, hand resting on her Zanpakuto's hilt. They're not attempting to conceal their intentions. Or their confidence, Sung Sun added. Sleeve partially concealing her expression as always. A single massive entry point rather than multiple coordinated breaches suggests they believe overwhelming force at one location will be sufficient. They're wrong, Naruto stated simply. The Senkaimon opened fully, revealing not just the expected Shinigami invasion force, but something far more concerning, a specialized decontainment unit developed specifically for capturing and neutralizing beings of extraordinary spiritual power. At its center stood a structure resembling a cross between a cage and a ceiling array, designed with one obvious purpose. They came prepared to capture the Soul King's reincarnation, Sung Sun noted, analytical even in crisis. Did they bring enough people? Nalil questioned, her military experience allowing quick assessment of the emerging forces. 5 captains led the operation, far more than Yoruichi had anticipated. Captain Commander Yamamoto himself stood at the forefront, his ancient, weathered presence radiating power that had disciplined Soul Society for thousands of years. Beside him, Captains Soifun, Komamura, Hitsugaya, and Byakuya Kuchiki emerged, each leading squadrons of their respective divisions. "Where's Rangaku?" Nalil asked quietly, noticing Captain Hitsugaya's lieutenant was conspicuously absent. Completing final preparations below, Naruto answered. Her role becomes critical if diplomacy fails. The Shinigami forces deployed with practiced efficiency, establishing a perimeter around Crystal Spire without immediate hostile action. Captain Commander Yamamoto stepped forward, his voice carrying across the distance without apparent effort. "Naruto Uzumaki," he intoned formally. "By authority of Central 46 and the Gote 13, you are hereby ordered to surrender yourself for containment and evaluation. The entity claiming Soul King heritage presents an existential threat to the balance between worlds." Naruto stepped to the edge of the spire, allowing his spiritual pressure to rise, not aggressively, but enough to establish that he spoke from a position of strength rather than weakness. "Captain Commander," he acknowledged with appropriate respect, "your timing is unfortunate. The balance between worlds is indeed threatened, but not by my presence in Hueco Mundo. The dimensional boundaries are failing due to the Soul Schism, the fragmentat ion of the Soul King's essence seeking reunification." "Convenient explanation," Captain Soifun called out, her distrustful nature evident. "The disruptions began precisely when you established control over Las Noches." "Correlation, not causation," Naruto countered calmly. "I was drawn to Hueco Mundo because the Soul King's fragments were already beginning to resonate across dimensions. My presence is a response to the imbalance, not its source." "Regardless of cause," Captain Hitsugaya interjected, "our instruments confirm critical degradation of dimensional boundaries. If your intention is truly restoration rather than dominance, you will cooperate with containment until a solution is implemented." Naruto studied the assembled captains carefully, noting the absence of those Yoruichi had identified as potential allies, Yukitake and Kyoraku specifically. Their exclusion from this operation suggested internal disagreement within Soul Society's leadership. "I cannot surrender," Naruto stated firmly. "Not because I oppose Soul Society's legitimate concerns, but because containment would prevent the very solution required. The ritual to establish new dimensional boundaries requires my active participation as the Soul King's vessel." Captain Commander Yamamoto's spiritual pressure intensified, a subtle warning of power held in careful restraint. "You propose that we allow an unproven entity claiming Soul King heritage to perform an unauthorized ritual affecting all realms of existence. Central 46 has deemed this risk unacceptable." "With respect, Captain Commander," Naruto responded. "Central 46 lacks critical information. 2 representatives from Las Noches have traveled to Soul Society carrying comprehensive data on the Soul Schism and its resolution. If you would simply, quote, 'We are aware of the unauthorized incursion,'" Captain Soifun interrupted sharply. "The Ryoka Yoruichi Shihoin and Espadachir Harribel have been detained pending investigation of their claims." The news struck Naruto with physical force. If Yoruichi and Harribel had been captured before reaching Urahara or their other potential allies, the diplomatic component of their strategy had failed. Another dimensional tremor shook Las Noches, more violent than any previous. Above them, the fracture in Hueco Mundo's sky widened perceptibly, revealing glimpses of Soul Society's distinctive architecture beginning to bleed through, the dimensional walls thinning to transparency. "We have no further time for negotiation," Captain Commander Yamamoto declared. "Secure the target. Containment units, prepare for immediate extraction. Defensive positions," Nalil called out to Las Noches' forces, her military command experience asserting itself. "Non-lethal protocols as established." "Wait." A new voice cut through the tension, familiar. Female, authoritative despite its typical playfulness. All eyes turned toward a secondary Senkaimon opening at the periphery of the assembled forces. Through it stepped Rangaku Matsumoto, accompanied by a sight Naruto had not anticipated, Captain Toshiro Hitsugaya, identical to the one already standing with the invasion force. Lieutenant Matsumoto, the first Hitsugaya stated coldly. Your unauthorized absence constitutes dereliction of duty. Return to formation immediately. I don't think so, Captain, Rangaku replied, though she addressed not the Hitsugaya who had spoken, but the one at her side. Would you like to explain, or shall I? The newly arrived Hitsugaya stepped forward, turquoise eyes focused on his duplicate. Release that form immediately. Your deception insults both my division and the Gote 13. For a moment, confusion rippled through the assembled Shinigami. Then, with deliberate slowness, the first, Hitsugaya, smiled, an expression entirely foreign to the young captain's typically serious countenance. How unfortunate, the impostor said, voice shifting from Hitsugaya's clipped precision to something more fluid, almost musical. I had hoped to maintain this charade until the containment unit was in position. The false Hitsugaya's form rippled and dissolved, revealing a slender figure with flowing white hair and delicate features. Though unfamiliar to most present, Naruto recognized him instantly from the Soul King's memories, Asakugi, one of Aizen's earliest and most dangerous creations. Not quite a Rancor, not fully Shinigami, but something engineered between realms. Captains, stand ready, Yamamoto commanded, recognizing the infiltration. Identity verification protocols, all units. But Asakugi merely laughed, a sound like crystal chimes in winter. Too late, I'm afraid. The containment unit isn't designed to capture the Soul King's vessel. His smile widened, revealing teeth too sharp for a natural being. It's designed to extract his essence completely. With a gesture, Asakugi activated the central mechanism of the supposed containment device. It hummed to life, emitting resonant energy that targeted not Los Noches broadly, but Naruto specifically. The golden energy within his spiritual structure responded instantly, vibrating at harmonious frequency with the device. A Soul King extraction array, Naruto realized, recognizing the technology from fragmented memories. Aizen created this. My master prepared for every contingency, Asakugi confirmed proudly, including the potential return of the Soul King in new form. Once extracted, your essence will complete his ascension, even from the depths of his imprisonment. The situation had transformed entirely. What had appeared to be a soul society intervention was actually an elaborate trap, Aizen's contingency plan executed by loyal followers who had infiltrated at the highest levels. Captain Commander, Naruto called out urgently, your force has been compromised. That device will destabilize the Soul King's essence, accelerating dimensional collapse beyond recovery. For a crucial moment, uncertainty flickered across Yamamoto's ancient features as he reassessed the situation. Before he could issue new orders, however, Asakugi activated additional mechanisms within the extraction array. 7 secondary figures emerged from concealment within the Shinigami ranks, each removing disguising Kido to reveal a Rancor modified with Aizen's experimental technologies. They formed a precise pattern around the extraction device, channeling their combined spiritual pressure to amplify its effects. The beam of energy connecting the device to Naruto intensified, drawing golden essence from his spiritual structure with increasing force. Pain unlike anything he'd experienced lanced through every aspect of his being, not merely physical agony but existential distortion as the Soul King's essence began separating from his integrated identity. Naruto, Nalil shouted, drawing her Zanpakuto fully. Declare, Gamuza. Her transformation was immediate, lower body becoming that of an antelope-like creature, armor forming across her upper body, and her Zanpakuto changing into a massive double-ended lance. Without hesitation, she charged toward the extraction array, intending to destroy it before the process completed. Simultaneously, the legitimate Shinigami forces recognized the true threat. Captain Hitsugaya moved with impressive speed, ice forming around his Zanpakuto as he called out, "Reign over the frosted heavens, Hirenmaru." The ice dragon manifestation of his Zanpakuto's spirit erupted toward the extraction device, joining Nalil's assault from the opposite direction. Before either could connect, however, Asakugi's 7 supporters generated a barrier of concentrated spiritual pressure, deflecting both attacks. The extraction requires only 90 seconds to completion, Asakugi announced with clinical detachment. Your interference is futile. Atop Crystal Spire, Naruto fought against the pulling force with every technique at his disposal. The integrated knowledge of the Soul King provided understanding of the extraction process. But not its countermeasure. This technology had been developed after the king's original fragmentation. Sung Sun, he managed through gritted teeth, activate the fortress resonance pattern. Now, without question or hesitation, the analytical Arankar made a precise sequence of gestures toward the crystal formations surrounding them. Throughout Las Noches, the network of crystalline structures began pulsing with coordinated light, the preparations they had been making for the reunification ritual repurposed as emergency countermeasure. The fortress-wide resonance TTERN created interference with the extraction beam, providing momentary relief from its pulling force. Naruto used the brief reprieve to implement the only solution the fragmented Soul King memories suggested: accelerated integration rather than resistance. Instead of fighting the extraction, he inverted his spiritual pressure, drawing the Soul King's essence deeper into his core identity. Golden energy suffused his entire being, no longer visible as separate from his natural spiritual structure but fully harmonized with it. Below, chaos had erupted as Soul Society's forces engaged Aizen's hidden operatives. Captain Soifun moved with assassin's precision, targeting the 7 Arankar maintaining the barrier around the extraction device. Captain Komamura's massive Bankai manifestation provi dead cover for smaller strike teams attempting to breach the defensive perimeter. Rangaku fought alongside her captain, her ash-based Zanpakuto ability creating openings for Hitsugaya's more direct attacks. Despite their coordinated efforts, Asakugi's defenses held, the extraction process continuing inexorably. A familiar voice cut through Naruto's pain-clouded awareness, Sung Sun, speaking with uncharacteristic urgency. The dimensional boundaries are collapsing exponentially. Multiple breach points forming throughout Las Noches. She was right. Throughout the fortress and beyond, the fabric of reality itself was tearing. Jagged fractures in space revealing glimpses of Soul Society and the human world bleeding through into Hueco Mundo. The extraction process was accelerating the very collapse it had been designed to prevent, creating a cascading failure across all realms. We need to complete the ritual, Naruto realized. Not fight the extraction, incorporate it. With tremendous effort, he straightened to his full height atop Crystal Spire, no longer resisting the extraction beam but channeling its energy into the fortress's crystal network. The golden light pulsed through the crystalline structures, following pathways Sung Sun had meticulously prepared for the original ritual. But we don't have representatives from all 3 realms working in harmony, Sung Sun objected, quickly understanding his intention. The ritual requires willing participation from Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and the human world. Another voice answered, Rangaku, who had fought her way to the base of Crystal Spire during the confusion. What do you need from each realm? Naruto's voice carried despite the chaotic energies surrounding him. 3 individuals with spiritual connection to their respective realms, channeling their energy in perfect harmony toward the dimensional nexus. I represent Soul Society, Rangaku called back, spiritual pressure rising as she positioned herself at one of ritual points Sung Sun had established. Complete or not, my spiritual energy carries Soul Society's essence. I stand for Hueco Mundo, Nalil declared, disengaging from her attack on the extractee. On device to take position at the second ritual point. Her Resurrection form radiated tremendous spiritual pressure, channeled with precision toward the growing nexus. The human world remains unrepresented, Sung Sun observed with clinical detachment despite the crisis surrounding them. Without all 3 realms in harmony, the ritual cannot succeed. As if in answer to this critical absence, Onyo. Their dimensional fracture tore open directly beside Crystal Spire, not a random breach, but a precisely formed garganta. Through it stepped 2 figures Naruto had feared lost, Yoruichi Shihoin and Harribel, accompanied by a 3rd individual whose spiritual pressure carried distinctive human world resonance. Kazuki Urahara, at your service, the green-clad shopkeeper announced with incongruous cheerfulness given the apocalyptic scenario unfolding around them. I understand you need a human world representative for a rather urgent ritual. How? Naruto began, before Yoruichi's triumphant grin provided partial explanation. You didn't really think we'd get captured that easily, did you? She called out, golden eyes gleaming with satisfaction. We reached Urahara precisely as planned. The detention was a necessary deception. Harribel elaborated more pragmatically. Central 46 had compromised communications throughout Soul Society. We required freedom of movement without surveillance. Urahara adjusted his striped hat, surveying the chaotic battlefield with calculating eyes. Fascinating extraction technology. Aizen's work, obviously, though significantly advanced by his followers. Quite innovative, if catastrophically misguided. Another violent tremor shook Las Noches as the dimensional boundaries continued deteriorating. Above them, the sky of Hueco Mundo had become a fr. Actured mosaic showing glimpses of Soul Society's buildings and human world landscapes bleeding through the thinning barriers. Positions, quickly, Naruto commanded. Urahara. Third ritual point. Yoruichi. Harribel. The extraction must be destroyed once the ritual begins. Without wasted motion, each participant moved to their assigned position. Urahara took his place at the third ritual point, completing the triangular formation with Rangaku and Nalil. Yoruichi and Harribel launched themselves toward the extraction device, their combined attack patterns demonstrating practiced coordination. At suggested significant collaboration during their mission. Atop Crystal Spire, Naruto channeled the Soul King's fully integrated power into the central nexus point. Golden energy flowed from his Han.ds into the crystalline structure beneath him, following pathways Sung Sun had meticulously designed based on the ancient knowledge he had shared. The resonance pattern is established, Sung Sun reported, monitoring the energy flow with preternatural focus. Harmonic convergence at 67% and rising. Below, Urahara, Rangaku, and Nalil began channeling their respective spiritual energies toward the central nexus. Each representative's contribution manifested visibly. Urahara's energy a vibrant green carrying human world's distinctive spiritual signature, Rangaku's a shimmering sea. Elver despite the void in her spiritual structure, Nalil's a powerful teal reflecting Hueco Mundo's evolved essence. Simultaneously, Yoruichi and Harribel executed a perfectly synchronized assault on the extraction device. Yoruichi's Shunko technique, the advanced combination of Hakuda and Kido she had mastered beyond any other Shinigami, created openings in Asakugi's defensive barrier. Through these openings, Harribel's precisely targeted water attacks penetrated, gradually eroding the extraction mechanism's structural integrity. Asakugi recognized the genuine threat to his operation. Interlopers, he snarled, abandoning his composed facade. The master's ascension will not be prevented. With a gesture, he redirected the extraction beam's full intensity, no longer attempting to draw the Soul King's essence gradually but to rip it free in one catastrophic surge. The pain that lanced through Naruto transcended physical understanding, his very identity being torn between dimensions. In that moment of existential crisis, Naruto made the decision the Soul King had never been permitted to make. Instead of resisting the extraction or surrendering to it, he channeled it, redirecting the tremendous energy being used to separate his essence into the ritual itself. Sung Sun, he called out, voice strained beyond recognition. Full resonance pattern, now. Understanding instantly, Sung S. unactivated the complete crystal network throughout Las Noches. Every structure, from the smallest formation to the massive spires, pulsed with synchronized energy, amplifying and directing the ritual's power. At the three cardinal points, Urahara, Rangaku, and Nalil felt their contributions suddenly amplified exponentially. Their distinct spiritual energies merged with the golden flow from Naruto, creating a harmonic convergence that transcended individual contributions. The extraction beam connecting Naruto to Asakugi's device reversed direction, no longer pulling essence from him, but receiving the combined ritual energy channeled through him. The device, designed to extract and contain, proved catastrophically inadequate for the influx of harmonized dimensional energy. With a sound like reality itself shattering, the extraction mechanism exploded, the containment failure releasing a shockwave of unregulated spiritual pressure that engulfed Asakugi and his supporters completely. When the blinding light faded, nothing remained of them but dissipating spiritual particles. But the ritual's momentum continued building. The three representatives remained locked in position, their spiritual energy flowing involuntarily now into the nexus Naruto had established. Throughout Hueco Mundo, Soul Society, and the human world, the dimensional fractures began closing, not through separation, but through harmonization. Atop Crystal Spire, Naruto stood transformed by the ritual's progression. His physical form had begun shifting between states, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent, sometimes purely spiritual. The complete integration of his original identity with the Soul King's essence had created something entirely new, a conscious, autonomous being existing simultaneously in all dimensional planes. It's working, Sung Sun observed with quiet awe, monitoring the crystal network's feedback. The dimensional boundaries are reforming, but differently, permeable rather than absolute. Below, the chaotic battle had ceased as both Shinigami and Arrancar witnessed the transformation occurring throughout Las Noches and beyond. Captain Commander Yamamoto stood with ancient eyes fixed on the phenomenon, recognizing power that transcended even his considerable experience. The ritual reached its crescendo as energy from all three realms flowed through Naruto into the dimensional nexus. For a moment that seemed to stretch infinitely, he existed everywhere simultaneously, perceiving Soul Society's ordered structures, the human world's vibrant complexity, and Hueco Mundo's evolving landscape as one unified reality. Then, with a final pulse of golden light that momentarily illuminated all three realms, the ritual completed. The dimensional boundaries reformed, distinct yet harmonized, separate yet connected through the nexus Naruto had established at Las Noches. As the blinding illumination faded, Naruto remained standing atop Crystal Spire, though transformed. His physical form had stabilized, but now emanated subtle golden light from within. His eyes, permanently transformed by the ritual, displayed the intricate pattern that combined his original spiritual signature WITH the Soul King's essence, no longer separate entities but a single, integrated being. Sung Sun approached cautiously, serpentine eyes studying him with analytical precision. The transformation is complete, she observed. You have become the anchor between realms. Not an anchor, Naruto corrected gently. A bridge. Below, the representatives who had participated in the ritual gradually read from the tremendous spiritual exertion. Urahara was the first to rise, adjusting his hat as he studied the transformed Las Noches with undisguised scientific fascination. Remarkable, he commented, producing instruments from his coat to measure the altered dimensional properties. The boundaries have re-established, but with precisely calibrated permeability. Spiritual energy can flow natural. Why between realms without structural collapse? Rangaku approached more slowly, her gray eyes fixed on Naruto with complex emotion. The ritual had affected her uniquely, the void in her spiritual structure now filled with something new. Not a replacement for what Aizen had taken, but a harmonization that compensated for the absence. The emptiness, she said wonderingly, hand pressed to her chest. It's balanced now, not filled, but no longer a wound. A side effect of the harmonic convergence, Naruto explained, descending to join them. The ritual didn't restore what was taken, but it reeded resonance that stabilizes your spiritual structure. Nalil had reverted from her resurrection form, though traces of its power lingered in her spiritual pressure. Las Noches has become a true nexus between worlds, she observed. Professional assessment tempered by evident wonder. Neither fully in Hueco Mundo nor separate from it. Yoruichi and Harribel rejoined them, both showing signs of significant exertion from their battle with the extraction device, but otherwise unharmed. Soul Society will have questions, Yoruichi noted, golden eyes taking in Naruto's transformed state with characteristic directness. Many questions, as will Central 46, Harribel added more pragmatically. Their authority has been effectively circumvented by this ritual. Captain Commander Yamamoto approached, his ancient spiritual pressure controlled but unmistakably present. The other Shinigami captains flanked him, their expressions ranging from Soifan's suspicious scrutiny to Hitsugaya's cautious assessment. What have you done? Yamamoto demanded, though his tone carried more gravity than accusation. The fundamental structure of all realms has been altered without authorization. With respect, Captain Commander. Naruto responded, authorization from whom? The Soul King established the original separation between realms without consultation. This recalibration merely corrects imbalances that developed over millennia, and places you at the center of the new order, Captain Soifan observed sharply. Convenient positioning for one claiming benevolent intentions. Not at the center, Naruto corrected. At the intersection. I don't rule the realms, I maintain their harmonious connection. Urahara stepped forward, scientific authority lending weight to his intervention. My prelim. Anari measurements confirm his description, Captain Commander. The ritual hasn't consolidated power, it's distributed it more efficiently across dimensional boundaries. Soul Society's fundamental authority remains intact, merely contextualized within a more balanced system. Yamamoto studied Naruto with the weighted gaze of centuries. You understand that Central 46 will not easily accept this transformation. I understand, Naruto acknowledged, but perhaps they'll be more receptive when they realize the benefits. Stable boundaries without constant enforcement. Hollow purification occurring utterly rather than requiring constant Shinigami intervention. Souls flowing between realms with reduced friction. A compelling theoretical framework, Yamamoto conceded, though without explicit approval. Time will reveal its practical implementation. The ancient captain turned to his forces. Stand down. Return to Soul Society. This situation requires extensive evaluation beyond our current capacity. As the Shinigami forces began their orderly withdrawal, Captain Hitsugaya approached Rangaku, his typically severe expression softened by evident concern. Lieutenant, he addressed her formally. Though his tone carried personal worry, your unauthorized absence was concerning. Rangaku's smile combined affection with characteristic mischief. Admit it, Captain, you missed me. Hitsug. Aya's scowl failed to completely mask his relief at finding her unharmed. Your decision to remain in Hueco Mundo requires official explanation. I know, she acknowledged, briefly serious. And I'll provide it. But first, she gestured toward her spiritual pressure, which now flowed with balanced harmony despite the extraction Aizen had performed. I found answers I've sought for decades. Sugaya studied her with perceptive turquoise eyes, noting the change. You seem complete. Despite what was taken. Balanced, she corrected, echoing Naruto's earlier explanation. Not the same as before, but no longer broken. The young captain nodded once, understanding without requiring further elaboration. Report to Soul Society when you're prepared to provide complete debriefing. Take whatever time is necessary. As the Shinigami forces departed through their Senkaimon, Las Noches gradually settled into post-crisis organization. Throughout the fortress, Arankaran evolved Hollow's Woe. RKED efficiently to stabilize crystal formations disrupted during the conflict. The new dimensional harmony manifested visibly in subtle ways, glimpses of other realms occasionally shimmering through transparent sections of the fortress walls, spiritual energy flowing more freely through previously rigid boundaries. Urahara continued his measurements, muttering scientific observations to himself with undisguised enthusiasm. Fascinating harmonic balance, dimensional permeability with structural integrity maintained, localized nexus points forming secondary resonance patterns. Yoruichi watched him with amused tolerance. He'll be occupied for days, she noted to Naruto. Perhaps longer. You've given him the most interesting puzzle of his scientific career. Will he return to Soul Society? Naruto asked. Yoruichi's smile turned knowing. Eventually. After thoroughly documenting everything, his report will carry significant weight with the more scientifically minded captains, Balin. Qing Central 46's inevitable political objections. Harribel approached, her practical nature asserting itself amid the post-crisis transition. Las Noches will need reorganization to function effectively as a dimensional nexus. Security protocols, diplomatic frameworks, resource allocation, all must adapt to our new reality. Already considering the administrative challenges, Naruto observed with appreciation. Always focused on practical implementation. Something almost like a smile touched Harribel's typically stoic features. Someone must. Visionaries require pragmatists to translate their innovations into functional systems. Quote, the subtle warmth in her tone spoke volumes about their evolved relationship, respect and strategic alliance deepening into something more personal without compromising her fundamental nature. As evening approached, an arbitrary designation in Hueco Mundo's eternal night, but maintained as organizational structure, the various participants in the day's memento. As events gradually dispersed to their respective responsibilities. Urahara established a temporary laboratory with Nalil's assistance. Rangaku began organizing her comprehensive debriefing for eventual return to Soul Society. Yoruichi departed to conduct peripheral security sweeps, ensuring no additional Aizen loyalists remained in hiding. Naruto found himself atop Crystal Spire once more, Kante. MP latting the transformed landscape of Hueco Mundo. The realm had changed profoundly, not just Las Noches with its crystal network, but the desert itself. Throughout the endless sands, crystal formations had begun emerging spontaneously, creating harmony points that gradually altered the spiritual composition of the dimension. Harribel joined him silently, her presence a steady counterpoint to the day's chaos. For several minutes, they observed the evolution together without speaking. The forest of Manos has completely transformed, she eventually noted. Our monitoring stations report the Eons have developed a collective consciousness while maintaining individual identity. They're organizing themselves into a functional society. Evolution without predation, Naruto observed. The path, the Soul King originally intended before the rigid separation was implemented. And your path now? Harribel inquired, the question carrying layers of meaning. Naruto considered thoughtfully. Nate, her entirely the Soul King nor simply Naruto Uzumaki anymore. Something integrated, combining the cosmic awareness of one with the human perspective of the other. A unique position, Harribel acknowledged. One that carries both opportunity and isolation. Not isolation, Naruto corrected gently. Connection. To all realms simultaneously, yes, but more importantly, to those who understand the balance we're creating. Their eyes met, communication transcending verbal limitations. The months of shared purpose had forged connection that neither had anticipated initially, the former Espada and Soul King reborn finding common purpose that gradually evolved into deeper understanding. A subtle presence announced Sung Sun's arrival, the analytical Arankar approaching with characteristic grace. Forgive the interruption. The fortress recalibration is proceeding according to specifications. Estimated completion within 48 hours. Your efficiency continues to impress, Naruto acknowledged, noting the subtle shift in her typically reserved demeanor when her contributions received genuine recognition. The crystal network's adaptive properties exceed initial projections, Sung Sun continued. Analytical precision complemented by evident satisfaction. Secondary resonance points are forming independently throughout Las Noches, enhancing dimensional stability beyond calculated parameters. Your understanding of the system's potential has proven invaluable, Harribel noted, the rare compliment from her former commander causing a momentary break in Sung Sun's composed facade. Before conversation could continue, Rangaku appeared, ascending the spire with determined purpose. Her spiritual pressure, newly harmonized by the ritual, flowed with balanced energy that complemented the nexus point Las Noches had become. Soul Society's preliminary response has arrived, she announced without preamble. Captain Yukitaki and Captain Kiraku have been appointed special envoys to establish formal diplomatic protocols with, she paused, smile widening, the sovereign nexus of Las Noches, as they're officially designating this realm. A political compromise, Harribel observed. Neither fully recognizing nor explicitly rejecting the new reality. Exactly, Rangaku confirmed. It gives everyone saving face while practical adaptation proceeds. Very much Kiraku's diplomatic style. When will they arrive? Naruto inquired. 3 days, Rangaku answered. Officially to evaluate the dimensional stabilization progress, but unofficially to establish working relation. Ships that bypass Central 46's more rigid objections. The conversation was interrupted by Yoruichi's arrival, her flash step bringing her to the spire's edge with characteristic dramatic flair. Perimeter secured, dimensional boundary harmonics stabilized, and, she paused, golden eyes gleaming with satisfaction, 6 additional Soul King fragments located throughout Hueco Mundo. 6. Sung Sun questioned, immediately calculating implications. That would constitute a significant percentage of the original fragmentation. Precisely. Yoruichi confirmed, all responding to the new harmonic pattern established by the ritual. They're not attempting reunification through destruction anymore, they're naturally aligning with the balanced system. Naruto absorbed this information, the Soul King's integrated knowledge providing context. The fragments were never meant to reunite through forced consolidation. Harmony rather than unification was always the intended outcome. As night deep, end over Las Noches. The arbitrary designation maintained for organizational purposes despite Hueco Mundo's perpetual darkness, the 5 individuals remained atop Crystal Spire, their conversation You ally shifting from immediate concerns to longer-term implications of the day's transformation. In that moment of relative peace following tremendous upheaval, Naruto observed the 4 women with whom fate had aligned him. Each represented different aspects of the new balance being established: Harribel's pragmatic strength, Yoruichi's adaptable freedom, Rengoku's harmonized resilience, Sung Sun's analytical precision. Together, they embodied the integration of diverse elements that characterized the dimensional balance he now maintained. The Soul King's memories had always emphasized balance through separation. But Naruto's human experience had taught him something the original king had never fully grasped. True balance came not from isolation but from connection, not from rigid boundaries but from harmonious interaction. As Las Noches pulsed with crystalline energy beneath them, nexus point of a new cosmic order, Naruto understood that his transformation had only just begun. The Soul Kin, G Reborn, had established new dimensional boundaries, yes, but more importantly, he had created the foundation for genuine connection between realms that had existed in artificial separation for millennia. Hueco Mundo, once the endless night of hollow hunger, was evolving into something new, not a paradise, but a realm of potential where evolution proceeded through harmony rather than predation. Soul Society, with its rigid hierarchies and ancient traditions, faced the challenge of adapting to a more connected cosmic structure. The human world, largely unaware of the metaphysical transformation, would nonetheless benefit from more balanced spiritual flow between dimensions. And at the center of this transformation stood Las Noches, no longer Aizen's fortress of domination, but Crystal Spire. The sovereign nexus where realms connected through conscious harmony rather than accidental collision. As the group eventually dispersed to their respective responsibilities, Naruto remained briefly alone atop the spire. His transformed senses perceived all 3 realms simultaneously, the subtle connections forming between dimensions that had existed in artificial separation for millennia. The Soul King had created walls between worlds. Naruto Uzumaki, integrating that cosmic legacy with human perspective, had replaced them with bridges, maintaining necessary separation while allowing harmonious connection. Not absolute sovereignty through isolation, but balanced influence through relationship. Sovereign of the Hollow Sands, Soul King Reborn, bridge between realms, titles meant little compared to the reality he now embodied. As Crystal Spire pulsed beneath him, golden energy flowing through pathways that connected rather than divided, Naruto embraced his new existence not as burden but as opportunity, the chance to create balance through connection rather than separation. The eternal night of Hueco Mundo stretched above him, its once empty darkness now illuminated by countless crystal line formations emerging across the desert, evolution manifesting visibly throughout the realm he had transformed. Not through conquest or domination, but through the harmonious integration of seemingly opposed forces. In that moment of quiet contemplation, Naruto Uzumaki, Soul King Reborn, finally understood the title that had been placed upon him. Not ruler, not god, not even king, but sovereign in the truest sense, one who serves the harmony of all he oversees. Sovereign not through power imposed, but through balance maintained. Sovereign resonance. Blank, _ blank. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.